Okay, we're going to see where we are right now with respect to people here. Terry, if you could please call do a roll call, please.
Absolutely. President Eric McHenry,
Present.
International Vice President Millie O'Donnell, and Acting Treasurer.
Present-ish.
Ish. I'm here. Immediate past President Ty Mott is not here yet.
I just texted him the link again, so we'll see how that goes. He's working on it.
Okay, thank you. EC member John Becker.
Present.
EC member Jim Cock. Not here right now. EC member Kathy Giese.
Present.
EC member Marcia Howes.
Present.
EC member Jenny Schnettler.
Present.
EC member Kendall Felder.
Present.
Region 1 President Bard Fuller.
Present.
Region 2 President Gary Russo.
Present.
Region 3 President Christine Baum.
She's not present. Bob Ely stepping in for her.
Eric, is there some formal way we're supposed to handle that, or
That's good enough.
got it? Region 4 President Fred Keel. I see your picture, but you're muted, so I know you're here.
Right again, I'm present.
Region 5 President Artie Martin.
Present.
Region 6 President Jan Heavener.
Present.
Region 7 President Ginger Slattery.
Here.
Glad to see you, Miss Ginger. I know it was a hassle getting in. We've been texting. Region 8 President Rick Everson. Is Rick Everson here today?
He is.
He's muted. Oh, there, I see you now. Thank you.
Present.
Region 9 President Nancy Fitzgerald.
Here.
Region 10 President Florence Tremoni.
Present.
Region 11 President Stephen Parr. I thought I saw Stephen here.
Present.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Be advised.
Thank you. Region 12 President Abe Hernandez.
Abe is not here. I'm sitting in for him. This is Sean Blom.
Hi, Sean. Thank you. Good enough.
Sean, you're first VP Region 12, is that correct?
You are correct.
All right, thanks.
Good enough, Eric.
Yeah, perfect.
Parliamentarian Lori Grassi.
Good morning.
Good morning. Executive Director Lori Plummer.
Here.
And we have CBL Chair Brad Briggs with us this morning. Morning, Brad.
Good
Okay.
morning.
We have everyone except Ty Mott and Jim Cock. We have a quorum. Our quorum. Oh, sorry, what? Our quorum. Oh, Ty, you're here. Yay.
Someone needs to mute for the echo to go away.
Yeah, let's just have everyone mute if you're not speaking. All right, thank you, Terry. Secretary Warren, I guess, is how I should refer to you.
Terry will do.
All right, thank you all. First, I just have to acknowledge publicly our newest member to the board, Kendall. Kendall, how you doing down there? We had a chance to meet Kendall as part of the exec council about a week ago, but welcome to the board, Kendall, and we're looking forward to getting to know you better and working with you in Jackson Center. Those of you who haven't been on the exec council, Kendall's already jumped in with both feet, so thank you very much for jumping in there. We really appreciate you offering to serve and particularly in this situation. So welcome aboard. Thank you. The next thing, we were going to have a special guest, Justin Humphreys, join us. Lori, is he on? Lori Plummer, is Justin here?
I am not seeing Justin. Jim Cock is coming online though right now.
Okay, if Justin joins us, someone let me know and we'll ask him to say a few words. As you guys have probably all read in the Blue Beret, after many, many years of working at Airstream Inc., Justin is leaving. I think his last day is within a couple of days or so, early March. Fortunately, we've got some strong partners with Airstream Inc. Molly Hanson, she's the Chief Marketing Officer, or CMO, as you sometimes see it abbreviated. And she is taking over as our designated position on the board as a non-voting trustee for Airstream Inc. Many of you who have probably met Molly before, if you were in Jackson Center last year for the strategy meeting, she and some of her team came in and joined us for a couple of times. Molly is a friend of the club, which is great. She was I think probably the main contact that Lori and I and others work with for a year and a half or 2 years on the Airstream partnership. And it would not have happened without Molly's support. So we're looking forward to working with her, and you'll see her in Jackson Center for those of you that are there. Okay, next we'll move to approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Okay, Jenny, motion to approve. Any comments or changes? I see Lori Grassi and then Ginger. If I miss hands, I apologize because it's visual right now. Lori Grassi, did you have comments or changes?
Yeah, I have two suggested changes, please. The quorum for the IBT on the minutes indicates 10 and it should be 12. And then on the motion under item 10.2, the motion for region president, big red number selection, the motion the language just got dropped off. So Terry, if you go back to the, I can help you with this, but it's just an incomplete motion as written, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or things changed to be changed in the motions? All right, so we have a motion now to approve the amended the amended minutes. So we have a first, we have a second. Well, we don't have a second. Do I have a second to approve the amended motions? The motion amended meeting. God, it's a day. All right, thank you, Millie. All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so approved. Thank you. And I think the process we typically do, and this is something the boards typically do, when motions get updated, the secretary will update the motions and we will repost it in this agenda as amended motions. And so you all will be able to see it in a matter of days or so. All right. If anyone wants an interim copy, just reach out to Terry directly and she can send you an emailed copy. All right. Thanks, Terry, for doing all this. Okay, first of all is President's Report. Just a couple of things. As you all know, we're getting excited to go to our strategy session. Millie and I have been spending quite a bit of time with Lori Plummer on the phone, getting the agenda ready. I think, Millie, probably in about a week or so, we'll have the final agenda, but it's coming together nicely. It's pretty much focused. It's not as focused on legislative things, minutes, motions, agendas. We do that all the time with the board. This is a strategy session. So it's looking out where we want to go as a club. What are some of the priorities that you all see from your members? We're going to have a deep dive on our financials. So Alan Rabb is going to be joining us in Jackson Center, and he's going to be continuing the financial literacy course that he has started. Some of you have gone through that, and it's really, really important. So we're going to spend about a half a day on that. Also, we will hopefully have a chance to talk about the results of the feasibility study. Jeannie will talk on that in a few minutes. But basically, it's a strategy meeting. Right. Again, we can get and talk about motions, agendas, and bylaws all the time as a group. This is really about what is important for our club members. You know, I always say, and one of my friends said, there's two sides to our club. One is the fun side, right? And that's why our members join the club and stay in the club at a almost 85% renewal rate. It's for the fun of the club. That's what we do when we're caravanning and we're camping. Running the club, the business side, is what we do on these meetings. And so Jackson Center will be focused more on what our club needs, what are the priorities, what are the investments. There's be some policy discussions, like, for example, as you've heard, we need to take a look at a reserve policy and our finances and maintenance funds policies, some things like that too. All right, it'll be a good time. It'll be a busy time. Dress attire is what you saw from Billy's note. Business casual, whatever that means. You know, it's sort of like not grungy jeans, because we're going to be in the corporate boardroom of Airstream Inc. So dress appropriately, but no ties, not required. If you have any questions, reach out to me. One thing I just want to touch on also is that, as you guys probably saw, you know, we finished the website menu refresh. That was a goal of the strategy session last year of the IBT. It was one of the top goals to relook at the top level menus on our website. That's been redone. We've created it's called a leadership portal, which is a place where everything related to CBL governance, membership committees, all in one place. And so thanks to a number of you on this who have contributed. Brad, the CBL chair, we updated some more documents last night on how to do a draft motion, things like that. So that is the one place to go for anything related to governing or leading our club. It's all one place. So thanks for everyone for the help on that. The thing I want to touch on is, it's in my President's Report, is Automation. Again, I keep tying it back to what we decided last year in Jackson Center. We said that we really want to help clubs, and one of the things was helping them automate their memberships, right? Because we get about, as I've said, about 100, 150, new members joining, new memberships joining each month. And so the local clubs have to keep those lists of their members up to date. It's a laborious process. Some clubs do it better than others. So this project that is now been successfully tested in Colorado, and thank you Colorado Airstream Club and Mark Neidem and the ITC, it actually syncs our club database member list with a MailChimp account that the club owns. And we'll talk more about this later, but the cool thing is that a membership chair could just open MailChimp, and for most clubs, it's a free MailChimp, and click on send to all my members or send to all my affiliates or send to both. And it just goes out. The emails are automatically updated. It preserves preferences, things like that. So it's pretty important. We'll be getting some training on that from our publications chair, Margaret Saylor, our ITC, and also our membership chair, Barb Darian. So good work on that. And thanks, Carolyn Beardshire and others in Colorado for doing that test. It's really, really exciting. There's no cost to the club for doing it, by the way, but it provides more tools to the members to help work their way through. One of the most important things is communicating with their members. The thing I want to share with you guys, I won't stay long on this because we do have a discussion on this a little bit later. And you should all be able to see this now. I think it's just, I want to talk about just a little bit. I'll spend no more than 5 minutes on this. I'm not asking for any discussion at this point. That's later on our agenda. But I want to talk about this topic because I just need to go on the record that confidentiality does not mean we're hiding things. And in fact, the way that this has been proposed, it actually provides more information to the board. And frankly, we're already giving more to the members as well. But I want to talk about this thing. I've talked to a lot of members on this, by the way, and there are concerns. And the number one thing I hear is that, well, wait a minute, we've been a club for over 60 years. Why do we need one now? And the reality is that we're doing things differently now than we have 60 years ago. For those of you who've been at the club a long time, you've been to these IBT meetings, and you know that the IBT and the committee, they rarely discuss any items that needed confidentiality, except for Ethics and Grievance Committee, of course. The region presidents only had the opportunity roughly 1.5 times per year to talk. And that was on a long table sitting shoulder to shoulder in a room with poor audio that probably 1% of our members were at the meeting. And so the region presidents did not have the opportunity to get involved that much. The treasurer and finance committee were only a little bit involved. They had only got high level information, nothing that was detailed. We had no strategic partnerships. We had no discount or benefit programs. And as I mentioned, the IBT only met about 1.5 times per year. So this is what it looked like prior to a couple of years ago. And what's green is what was shared. What's red is what wasn't, and none or NA is what didn't matter. So as you can see in the columns to the very left, the left 2 columns, we really had no strategic plans. We didn't really have a strategic partnership. We had very few benefits, and if so, they were talked about and discussed only at the International President or Executive Committee level. Obviously, we had legal settlements. Those were not discussed anywhere beyond the exec council. And by the way, legal settlements are when our club gets sued. And we have 18,000 members in our club, and you have to understand that that sometimes happens. This is handled with our club attorney that we have on call. Our club attorney advises the exec council and the president, and we sometimes choose to settle out of court because of the cost. It's galling, but financially it makes sense sometimes. We obviously never talk about personnel issues, negotiations on international rallies, the club budget we always shared, finance report we always shared, but we didn't show any details on the finances. And if those of you who have seen the treasurer's report for this board, it is exactly what I was hoping for 6 months ago. It's a robust presentation, robust deep dive in our financials. So this is what we're proposing to do now, is that we do want to be able to discuss all these things on our strat plan, all these things on our partnerships, and these are ones that haven't been created yet. These are ones that are on our target list. And at some point, those would be public, but you can't share that with our members until we negotiate, talk to the people, because otherwise there's just chaos. And so you'll see on here that really the goal of a confidentiality agreement is that we have an agreement within the board is that the things that we talk about privately, which is maybe only 5 or 10% of things that we do, we keep confidential until or if it's ready to share with the public and our members. So there's a couple of options that you, the board, will be thinking about later today. And this is not my decision. This will be up to the board to determine, is that how far we go or if we go. For example, it's my belief and exec council's belief that exec council finance ethics and grievance has to be under confidentiality. The board can decide whether or not it should be extended to the IBT and whether it should be extended to region VPs or not. So those are some of the choices. But I wanted to tee up with you that this is really not about holding information back. It's just sometimes it isn't ready to share the information. And the one example I will give with you before I stop is that and by the way, I was very proud of the IBT. Last year in Jackson Center, Bob Wheeler and I signed the partnership agreement in May. But we agreed as two organizations not to share that information until June. It allowed Airstream Inc. to be able to prepare to roll it out to their dealers, which is very important. And it prepared us to be able to roll it out to our people. I was really pleased that the board kept that confidential for those 2 months, and then we rolled it out with great fanfare. That's an excellent example of where some things are confidential for a while, but at some point they become, part of our general discussion. All righty, so that's me from and we're going to talk about this in Jackson Center also. Our facilitator will be helping us talk through some of these options we have in front of us. All right, let's go to exec council reports, and we'll do this. And whoever raises their hand first, I know Marcia has something, so you go first.
All right, sorry, I had to get off mute. I just wanted to let everyone know I do have time on the strategy session agenda, and Millie, if you could let me know how much time, so I make sure I plan appropriately to discuss where we are on the dealer playbook. You might recall from a previous update, we did decide to go with a light version. I had great team working on it together with Kathy and Jim, and we decided that if we rolled out too much, it would be overly burdensome and probably get a lot of just rightful pushback. So what we'd like to do is I'm going to introduce that light edition to everyone, talk about pilot opportunities, but as pre-work next week by Monday or Tuesday, I'll be sending everyone a short survey. It'll be free form on what you believe the extent of governance in this area should include. It'll just be 2 to 4 very specific questions. And then for all of the region leaders, I'll be sending you a survey on who today are your primary contacts with the dealers that are in your region. So that'll be custom to each region. I already have that mapped out, what regions match which dealers. If you do use dealers that are physically outside your specific region just because they're right next door, but across the state line, perhaps, I'll leave a blank space for you to share that with me, and then I'll consolidate all of that for reference as well. So that's what I was planning, and just look for those 2 emails on your thoughts on governance and your thoughts on relationships. So that was everything.
Thanks, Marcia. And Terry Warren, you probably noticed that Councilmember Koch joined us now. So he's on.
Got it.
Thank you. Before we get to RV Park feasibility update with Jenny, any other updates from the exec council? All right, Jenny, it's yours.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see your faces. Well, we had a video meeting the other day with the Advanced Outdoor Solutions. That's the company that's going to do our feasibility study. And they're very, very experienced. They do over 100 of these a year, which is quite surprising. At any rate, it was a great meeting. We met with their entire team, and it was our team with David Gully, Alan Rabb, Lori Plummer, Eric McHenry, and myself. And we really got a good insight into what direction we'd like to take things regarding the study, regarding the information we'd like from them. So things are on their way. We will have a preliminary draft in the next week, and we'll have the chance to go over it at our strategy meeting. And at that point, this is just a preliminary draft. We may say, boy, you guys are not answering what we need. Or we may say, in answering what we need, it brings up further questions. So that'll be the direction that we take at the strategy meeting. Couple interesting points. Somebody in our membership has said, why in the world are you even bothering doing a feasibility study? And I hope you all understand that the reason we're doing a feasibility study is to find out from a disinterested third party, is this a wise idea? Is this a good use of assets? And how would we best go forward if we did? So those are questions that we hope they can bring to light for us as we look through their initial draft. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Any questions for Jenny before we move on to other council, exec council updates? All right. Oh, Nancy, Region 9 President.
Jenny, can you hear me?
I sure can.
I had a member ask why that was not included in the board packet. They were just wondering why your preliminary study question and answers was not in the board packet.
We haven't gotten anything back yet. This was
Okay.
simply a meet and greet for them to find out, what do you want from us? So that's all. I don't have anything yet other than to say, basically the questions we all have. Should we be doing this? What will it cost? How would we proceed forward? What would some of the risks be? Those are strictly a sort of a template of what we're looking for in the study. So we haven't had any results quite yet.
Thank you, Jenny.
Good question. Thank you.
And by the way, the other thing I will add is that we're taking a bit of a risk talking about this in a public forum. I don't know how many people from Ohio are watching this, but typically development projects you talk about privately until you're ready to go to the municipality with your permit package. And those permit packages often include things to make sure that the neighbors are, fine with it. And the last thing that people often want is to have these ideas, hey, we're going to build something, and not have had a chance to talk to the municipality to get their guidance, to talk to some of the neighbors to get their feedback. And so I would ask that, although it's public within WBCCI, that we try to keep it somewhat quiet out of respect for any changes we may have to do if we move forward on conditions or permitting or mitigation for neighbors. Because we do, if you've been to Jackson Center, you do know that there is a neighbor on the west side of the property, I believe. I forgot north, south, east, west. So we haven't yet spoken to them yet. All right, thank you, Jenny. I think that's it for exec council reports. Lori, Plummer, let's go to your executive director report.
Good morning. Thanks, Eric. One thing though, for housekeeping, Debbie Hammer is going to be presenting today, but I don't know in the attendance list who Debbie Hammer is. We have several Debbies. So Debbie Hammer, if you could correct your name so we know who to promote, that would be wonderful. I appreciate that. Going on to my executive director report, it is in the packet, just a couple updates. As of this morning, we have 9,180 memberships, which equals roughly 16,892 members within our club. I also want to update on my note about banking guidelines. It was brought to my attention. The guidelines we'll be sharing is for regions and clubs that are based in the United States. That is where those guidelines will come into play. I also publicly want to make sure that we thank Gina Caston. She was our Art of Airstream Cooking author. She had been contributing to the Blue Beret since 2018. She decided to retire from that position. We were very sad to see her go because she had amazing food recipes and contributions to the Blue Beret. But I'm excited to announce that Terry Warren has volunteered to step in and fill those roles. I know I've eaten Terry's cooking many times and it's amazing. So I'm excited to see what recipes Terry has to contribute to the Blue Beret. I'd also like to update that as of this morning, Sedalia, we have 1,193 rigs registered. So that is 60 since in the last 3 weeks. So we're excited. We are making strides there. I met with the executive council at our normal meeting, first part of this month, and they have provided the approval to go ahead and move forward for our 2026 location, which is going to be in Minot, North Dakota. So I have a quick video and some things I'd like to share with y'all about Minot. Again, this is a location that I have just been I can't even describe how excited I have been. working with them. They want us there, which makes a big difference when we try to come into community. They're willing to do bunches of things. So let's see here. Is my share working? I see somebody, Kathy, saying yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So for those that are not familiar with Minot, North Dakota, it's located in the north central region of North Dakota, about a population about 50,000, 1,500 feet elevation in the central time zone. We are targeting August of 2026, and their highs are normally around 81, lows of 56. As I mentioned, their locals just ooze with passion for their community. I don't know how else to describe this. They hosted myself, Eric, and Debbie Wood as the rally committee, and I was just amazed at the amount of people that came out to meet us and say, what can we do to get you guys here? We want you here. They're only about 50 miles from the Canadian border, so that makes me super happy that hopefully we can bring more of our Canadian members, and as well as about 100 miles from the International Peace Garden. On this deck, you will see on the right that statue that was donated by WBCCI, and it was redone in 2014, 2016 timeline, thanks to Gail Harrower and her team of raising member dollars to make this statue happen. And so exciting that we will be that close to really get everybody involved in that. The town has a little bit of everything: zoos, museums, a Scandinavian Heritage Park, a discovery center for kids and adults, and a downtown just full of all kind of character between the restaurants and the shops, as well as outdoor experience that includes hunting, hiking, fishing, birding, and etc. Here's about a 2-minute, maybe not that long, video that I'd like to share. And we should have sound if everything goes well. So there's a quick view of Minot. As I mentioned, it's just amazing, the folks there and what they want to share with us. So a quick overview of the Minot North Dakota State Fairgrounds, which you can see here. Very nice facility. And we're going to have 1,160 powered sites, 30 amp with pump outs. One thing that is a little out of our norm, but we are learning, is we're going to have scheduled water deliveries. Again, we're trying to expand our services and things we can offer our members so we can expand our footprint and where we can go for our rallies. And then we'll have 60 full hookup sites as well. If you look at this map, everything in the red squared areas basically will be parking, except for the red square to your far right, the SE2, that's going to be a staging area where folks will come in. So although we're having 1,160 powered site, we are going to have opportunities for boondockings and things of that nature. This is the State Fair Center building. This is one amazing building. Again, this is my 9th 10th rally. I don't remember how many rallies, probably 12, because I've been here 10 years. Anyway, this building is amazing. 90% of what we're going to be doing is going to be in this building. It's huge. I've never seen a building so big. And then we do have a couple buildings on the outline for our pickleball players. I want to make sure we had space for pickleball as well as our kids. So it'll be an all exclusive contract with them. We are working on that right now. And we should have dates, firm dates, I'd say within the next 4 to 6 weeks, which we are having folks already asking for those dates since they know that is happening. And I believe that is all I have. Does anybody have any questions for me?
But I want to thank Lori, the rally team. And by the way, I'm on the rally team, not because I'm president, it's because I'm leading the RAT team, the rally rival team. I'm the new Larry Owens. So I want to thank the finance committee. They did a phenomenal presentation and analysis of our international rally budget, looking at historical years and trends. I've sent that to the region presidents a couple of weeks ago. But we want to make sure that the numbers are solid also. The international rally is by far our largest sort of discretionary income to the club. All right, Florence, your hand's up.
I don't know if it's an appropriate venue, but I noticed in your notes, Lori, you mentioned the Stripe project. Is that intended just at the international level, or is that going to be for local clubs to use for registrations?
At this point, I'm focused on international level, just trying to bring all of our volume of transactions into one location. To get volume discounts and other things, but I don't see why Stripe could not be used. I do know some local clubs are using Stripe already. They're a little less expensive than PayPal, a little easier to deal with, but we are definitely going to explore as much as we can on that, Florence, because again, I know volume makes a difference when it comes to processing rates.
Okay, thank you.
Gary.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Lori or Eric, I'm assuming because you have different services that would be available, you're going to have a different pricing structure for those two options.
Between the full hookups and the Power Plus pump outs?
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, just wanted to find out if you were distributing the cost evenly across all, or if you were going to be putting up a cost structure.
Yeah, there'll be a cost difference with premium sites, which the full hookups are considered premium versus pump outs versus boondocking. Yes, there'll be different tiers of cost for that.
Thank
And
you.
those of you that were in Lebanon, Tennessee, remember that there was 50 or so sites that, I don't know what the number was, that became available for full hookups, and we did a not a raffle, we did a first come, first serve for the first 50, and people paid extra for those sites that chose to do that. So yeah, thank you. Good question. All right, any other questions for Lori on our executive director report? Okay, great. Now we're going to move to the quarterly financial update. Millie, and are you bringing Alan in, or he's already in? Okay, great. Millie, I hand it over to you.
Okay, Alan, for those of you who don't know Alan Rabb, he is the brains behind the finance committee at this point. He hopefully needs no introduction. Do I see him here? Did he get let in, Lori?
I'm
Yes.
here.
Okay, I'm gonna let him roll with it. Eric or Lori, you guys will handle the
Do you want to
changing
put
of
the slides up now, Alan?
Yes, please.
By the way, you guys, so you have the treasurer report in the board packet. This slide pack is done just so you can kind of have a sort of a managed overview. We'll add this also to the agenda afterward as well. All right, Alan, off to you. Tell me when you want next page.
All right, great. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me. Just to let you know, like Eric said, in the board pack, I did it more in a commentary fashion in the board pack. What I've done is I've pulled it out and put it in a PowerPoint. I think that's a little bit easier to read. So going forward, I'll work with with Millie, or if you have a new treasurer by then, on what your preference is, if it's PowerPoint or commentary. But let's move through this relatively quick. Eric, if you'd advance, there's about 6 slides in here. I put this in about forward-looking statement. With all the conversation lately about confidentiality and all that, I want to make sure that as I'm using words when I'm describing to you the financials, that understand much of this is estimates. I'll go through the actuals, But if I say something's an estimate, don't hold me to the fact that I'm talking about something that's actually going to occur. It's an estimate. So I just put this a cautionary statement forward that some of the language I use in here is going to be more vague than concrete. So, all right, if you move to the next slide. All right, so here's what we're going to cover. 3 financial statements, which I think we talked about in first quarter. The income statement, we called it revenue and expense statement. I'm changing the name. It's going to be called an income statement, which is the typical statement you use in business. And I'm going to go through the replan with you since we replaned the budget, Lori and I and Eric and Millie. The balance sheet and then the cash flow statement. And then I'll give you a bridge to what I communicated to y'all in first quarter. And then talk about some activities we're going to do during the strategy meeting up in March. So if you want to move on to the next one. All right. What I've tried to do here is to focus. Let me set the chart for you first so you understand what it looks like. Consistent with first quarter, on the far left, you'll see your revenue income line on the top line. Don't look at the numbers yet. And then on the left, you also see your expenses. And I've broken our expenses down into 5 key categories. And I've subtotaled it. What the subtotal reflects is think about it from a cash perspective. It's what the Airstream Club International Club budget is from a cash perspective. Below that total, you'll have interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, which gets you down to what I'd call a net income. We're going to change that terminology in the strategy meeting as well, but I need more time to explain it to you. You get down to a net income line, and then I've split out the international rally and the caravan because those are other the other activities that occur within the club, but they're unique to themselves. And so I would like for y'all to begin to frame this up where you think about the club budget is one budget, the international rally is a budget, the caravan is a budget, and then if we move into any other types of activities, whether it's RV parks or whatever, that'll all be reported separately as well. Okay, so here's now what I've done is I've numbered the columns. Hopefully this will be easier to follow. Column 1 is your actuals from last year. Column 2 is where we are through second quarter. Column 4 is the revised plan. And column 3 is simply the difference between column 2 and column 4. You squeeze what you have to do in the downhill. Column 5 is the thing I'd really like you to focus on. So up you see in the title, 50% of our year has elapsed. In other words, we've completed 6 months of the 12 months in our fiscal year. So I try to benchmark everything against that. Column 6 and 7 are simply variances to 2022, the previous fiscal year. So let me walk you through. If you look at revenue income line on column 2, Q2, we've collected, quote unquote, roughly $650,000 of our planned, excuse me, planned $950,000 income that we planned in the year. So we've collected about 68% of it through 50% of the year. If you look at the expenses, you see again, I'll just do one line for you. Headquarters, we've spent $310,000 of the $602,000 budget in column 4. Means we've got $300,000 on the downhill in column 3. Then you've moved to the far right. Building maintenance, we've spent 53% of the budget. Utilities, 55%. Equipment, 93%. Tech support, 90%. And you think, oh my gosh, we're really overspending equipment and technical support. Well, if you add all those expenses up together, they only total $56,000. Although we want to be able to stay within our spending budget, I don't see that there's a substantial risk to our overall plan if these expenses go over budget. We don't want them to go over budget, but the total budget for all 4 categories is only $56,000. So we've spent 52% of the year on headquarters, and then you can read the rest of the chart. I don't need to read it to you. But right now our total expenses are at 48% with 50% of the year elapsed. So I view this as we're basically on our plan at this point from an expense management standpoint. Okay, the green box in column 4. The replan has got us at a $45,000 loss for the club. After you take into account the non-cash item depreciation, that's $70,000. And then when you look at the net income after the small revenue that's generated from the caravan, it's roughly about a $50,000 loss for the year. Now I'm going to go through, I do a thing called walk forwards. I'm going to walk forward. What did we do in the original plan versus the revised plan? And what were the changes that we made to get to these numbers? So I'll pause here for any. Eric, would you rather that I go all the way through it, or you want to pause as we go?
Keep going.
Okay, next slide then. All right, now here's the replan. Here's what happened. The headline, the very first bullet point, we cut $88,000 of expenses. I'm sorry, $88,000 of income and almost $130,000 of expenses for a revised net profit of $45,000 in the whole. The second bullet point on this slide is the original budget, including caravan, international rally, and depreciation, was forecasted at about minus 42,000. The red arrow says the revised budget's got it at minus 70. You're like, well, if you replanned, why are we getting worse? It's because we shifted the $65,000 profit for international rally out of this fiscal year to the next fiscal year. So that was a hit. That money's going to come back to us, but it won't be until the next fiscal year. I'm not going to read the chart below, but you can see in the chart below, there's the whole list of all the items in the expense areas that were reduced in the income area. The one highlight I will leave for you is the very first line item, membership income. We reduced that to a growth rate of 4%, which is what we've historically done over the last 6 years. It was planned at about an 18% growth rate, which just was too high. And so I feel we've got a more realistic income and expense budget at this point. And the fact that, everybody went kind of all hands to be able to get this reduced to a revised budget, I think we're in a pretty good spot. So go on to the next slide, if you would. All right, I'm sorry, this one's fuzzy. Lori told me it was, and I forgot to replace it, so my fault. Balance sheet. So just to set this chart for you again, on the far left, your assets is the first set of categories. That's things that we own, cash, buildings, stuff like that. Liabilities are things that we owe, and that's the next section. And then equity down at the bottom, that would be also items that we've got equity in or money that we've actually collected. So you see the 7 columns at the top. I've populated the data through Q2, column 3. And then the thing I wanted to focus on this was on column 7, 730,000. I'm sorry, my dog. Hold on. I'm on a rally and my dogs are barking at the cars going by. So $700,000 increase from Q2 of this year to Q1 of this year. The predominant reason for the increase in the $700,000 is because we booked a new building. We booked the building that was purchased, and you can see that just above the green box at about $479,000. And then checking accounts have gone up because we've taken in renewals and international rally fees. So we're collecting cash. Okay. Liabilities down in the section below, you can see those numbers are up as well because we actually took a mortgage. Okay. So going to move to the next chart, please. All right, cash flow. This is the last of the financial schedules. And again, when we're in the strategy meeting in next month, I'm going to go through this in a lot more detail than I am now. So operating activities on the far left, investing and financing activities are your 3 categories of cash flow. On the far right, you can see my variances versus prior year and versus Q2, consistent with what I just told you on the balance sheet. You've got about a $900,000 increase in your operating activities versus prior year and about $100,000 versus prior quarter, predominantly driven by membership and international rally fees. Your investing activities, you can see Q2 versus last year, investing is down $600,000. That's because we purchased a new building. And then financing activities is up $500,000 because we purchased a new building. So there's not a lot going on in here other than those things. The rest of the stuff moves around as our cash moves and our expenses move. That's it. Next slide. Okay, these are my last 2 slides. So about five items on each one. I wanted to make sure as I have the opportunity to do this with you whenever I get that opportunity. I always try to bridge my last conversation with you to today. And so these next 2 slides are bridging those conversations. So last quarter, I told you all we had 10 activities. The first one was to replan the current budget. We've done that. And you saw that in the commentary and in what I just presented. We also talked about points 2 and 3, facilitating a finance acuity or a finance training with both the EC and region leadership. I've now done that for both the EC and region leadership. We will spend more time on that when we're together next month. Sedalia. We didn't just look at Sedalia. I looked at all the rallies all the way from Doswell. I eliminated the Colorado rally that got canceled because of COVID, so we could look at consistent numbers. And I looked at all the expenses. I mean, there's hundreds of them. So I looked at all the expenses and I compared them for all our historical rallies that have actually completed. And then for Sedalia, York, and Minot, the ones that are planned. And the important thing to note here is we didn't look at them just on a dollar basis, but we looked at them on a per person and a per rig basis as well, because you want to understand how your expenses are moving. You know, if your expenses are within budget, to me, that's not good enough. You need to understand how are they moving on a per person or per rig, because they could actually increase on the expense side and income could stay flat. And that's an indicator you could be in trouble unless you actually do something against the expense management. So I presented that to Eric, Millie, and Lori. We got to a really good spot on all three of the planned rallies. And we talked about some different approaches on these as we go forward. But that's, I think we're in a really good spot on the rallies. I have a lot of confidence in that. So depreciation, there's been a lot of back and forth on how you include depreciation. We'll talk more about that next month. Right now, I've split that out as a separate line item. I'll tell you how we're going to look at that moving forward, or I'm going to propose we look at that moving forward to the new treasurer. So if you go to the last slide, please. Okay, the last 6 items. Reporting, you're starting to see some of the new reporting. There's still work to be done, but you saw some of the new reporting here. One of them was even blurry for you. So equitable cost sharing, put that on hold until you get a new treasurer to talk about cost sharing between caravans, international rallies, and all that. So I just think that's something we need to look at. Operating reserves, Eric mentioned a little earlier. We proposed a policy for 3 reserves instead of 2, like I've told you before. We're going to talk about that when we get together next month. Deferring expenses, the $80,000 for the potential renovation for the building. I think we're going to talk about that next month as well. So that's been put on hold. Credit card fees, another project that the finance committee would like to take on. We put that on hold until the new treasurer's on board. And then financial training. The headline I'll tell you here, I'm real excited about what we're developing because we're forming an architecture of actually how we think that the finances for the club should be managed as we move forward and how the finance committee needs to interact with that and with the treasurer. So I'll present all that to you next month when we're together in Jackson Center. But I'm pretty excited about that. So that's it.
Okay, first, I just have to jump in and thank Alan and the finance committee. So thanks Chris and Ken and Millie and Jim. This is exactly what my vision had been, 6 months ago about how we start to get better at the business side of running our club. Because this is the group here, the IBT, that needs to agree to where we put our money, how much our reserves should be, what are the cautionary things. As you'll hear in Jackson Center, the finance committee has done a really good job looking at the risks, right? Because we can't project everything in the future, but there are some risks that we're starting to see, some trending, they call them environmental issues. So thank you guys. It took us a while to get to this, but I really appreciate the work. And the finance committee has put in a tremendous amount of work over the last number of months, and it's finally come to fruition. So thank you. Any questions on the finance and the treasurer's report? Nancy?
This is an unsophisticated question, but on page 35, there was a $45,000 reserve, the reserve funds. Where did it go? I know it went somewhere, but I never could figure out where it went. Did it go to help offset some of our cost? What happened to it?
Yeah, the short answer to that is yes. So when we reduced the income budget by $88,000 and got that more realistic, we had to make sure we reduced every expense we possibly could. So unfortunately, the reserve got eliminated as well to help, kind of fill the bucket, with dollars that we needed in order to operate the club this year. Full intent that as we move forward, and again, we'll talk about this next month, about how do we establish enough funds in order to create the 3 reserves that we're proposing. But first thing we've got to do is make sure and we're going to talk about multi-year planning as well. When we start talking about planning, how do you plan out 24 months ahead of time what your income stream and your expense stream is going to be? So finance becomes boring at that point because you actually know what your predictability is. But planning an 18% membership increase is not where we should have been. So we're writing that tide. So one simple way to look at it is the $45,000 solve for $45,000 of the $88,000 reduction in income is the simple way to think about it.
And one thing Nancy and the rest of the board that the finance group is going to talk us through is that, as I shared with you guys under separate email, you could look at the historical profitability of our international rallies. They're being managed quite well, and they all throw a reasonable profit. And the question for the board will be, how do we view those profits? Where do they go? Do they go into our reserves to build our reserves and maintenance funds? They sit in a separate account. So there's a bunch of options you all have to think through and talk about what we do with those monies as well. Kathy?
Yeah, Alan, one of the things that just keeps coming back to me is now that we no longer do our international rally around Wally Byam's birthday, we're like this year, it's showing we have no income from from the international rally. Next year, we'll have income from 2 international rallies. What's your opinion on whether changing our fiscal year to resolve that issue?
Yeah. Just all chords on the table. I'm not a big fan of fiscal years. I'm not an advocate. Whoever the new treasurer is, I'll be chopping on their ear to be able to change it from fiscal year to calendar year. I mean, we all operate our lives on calendar years, and many nonprofits are on fiscal years, I understand. But if you move to a calendar year, I think it'd be a heck of a lot easier for people to understand, particularly given that we change out leadership within the club every couple years. You need something that's going to be easy to understand for the future. And so I'm an advocate of calendar years, not fiscal years. And then that way you don't have to worry about international rallies shifting and accruing money on your balance sheet and then pulling it back off and offsetting. You don't have to mess with all that stuff. It's just a lot simpler, but that's not my call. That's just something I'll bug the new treasurer about. So.
Okay, thank you, because it seemed to me like a lot of what we've spent time and energy on this last 6 months has been caused by the fact that, Sedalia is going to be in the fall. So thanks, Alan.
Yeah, no, the finance committee will do a proper assessment of the pros and cons on fiscal versus calendar, so you can make a good logical fact-based set of decisions. But I'm just my advocacy is towards calendar, not towards fiscal.
Thanks, Kathy. Any other comments before we move ahead? Millie, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just really want to thank Alan certainly for his expertise and his patience, and the rest of the finance committee for being patient with me. I'm a self-admitted, not a numbers girl. I'm the girl who knits a lot, but I don't knit for gauge. So they've been really, really good about having to explain it again to me. And sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't, but they don't even roll their eyes when I ask copious amounts of questions. So I appreciate all the work you guys have put in. Thank you very, very much.
So please, you all get feedback back to Millie and Alan and the team, probably through Millie and Alan, about is there another format you like, what you liked or didn't like? Because I think in a lot of boards I've been on, these financial things kind of evolve because, we need to get it so that it's easy for y'all to understand the questions that you want to ask are being answered. The things you don't care about, maybe we don't spend time on. So we'll be improving this format over the next year. All right, thank you all. Okay, we're going to move on to we have a caravan committee report only. It's in the board packet, but I'm really pleased to see Debbie Hammer down there. Debbie Hammer is our new ethics and grievance chair. Took over from Bob Caldwell starting a couple of months ago. And one of the discussions that Debbie and I had was sort of how do we improve the ethics and grievance, or how do we shift it a bit, or any other options? But first, John, I see your hand up. Sorry, I must have missed you.
Yeah, I just have 2 quick additions to my report. One is, just so the members of the IBT know, the Executive Council approved a European contractor caravan for 2025 that'll be led by Peter Schwartz. There's a lot of information in the Executive Council minutes, and if you have further questions, you feel free to reach out to me or to Ray or to Peter. And also in the list of caravans, Mark Kruer wanted me to add that the Grapes and Grains Intra Club will be running a caravan sipping to Niagara Falls later this year. So those 2 additions to the caravans that didn't make it into the report.
Okay, thanks, John. Awesome. Okay, let's go to Debbie. There you are over there.
Hello, I'm Debbie Hammer, and for those of you who don't know, we've been members of the club for over 14 years, over 15 years actually, and my husband has been a Region 2 president. We've both been presidents of our local club, so we come from a very active background. I had the pleasure of working with Bob Caldwell and Chuck Kipley when I was originally sent to the Grievance and Grievance Committee, and if you've read the report, this is what we have come up with. Basically, what we would like to do is we'd like to clarify some things that were unclear in the original information. Try to clarify what is a grievance and what isn't. And the other big thing we did is we shortened the time frame. Nobody needs 30 days to discover that they have been offended, and nobody needs 30 days to come to a conclusion after hearing what they have heard at a hearing. So we've cut everything in half. Now the time limits are 14 days for filing a grievance and 14 days for the committee to render a decision. The other thing that Eric and I have talked about is mediation. And what mediation can do is it can cut off a lot of the grievances that go to the committee. The International Ethics and Grievance Committee is really a court of last resort. It would be hoped that many disputes between members are really very small things that could be just handled by two people sitting down together, perhaps with a third party, and just decide that, oops, maybe I made a mistake. Oops, can I fix it? Fine, let me apologize, and let's go on from there. If it can't be handled at that level of just two people talking together at the unit level, perhaps it has to go up to the region level. And in the region level, it becomes a somewhat more formal process. Members have to be appointed. A committee has to be set up of 3 people, and there have to be presentations from both sides. If this doesn't work, finally, it goes up to us, and it becomes a very, very formal matter. And the results can be very, very harsh. What we'd like to do is try and figure out how to settle things at the lowest possible level. One of these possibilities is mediation. What some people say of mediation is when you have a mediator, nobody is happy at the end, because what it really involves is the parties sitting down with the third party, and the third party tries to bring them to a solution that is mutually acceptable to both sides. And if it's mutually acceptable to both sides, many, many times one party will lose something, the other party will gain something, and it's kind of a back and forth. The other thing about mediation is that it doesn't always solve the problem. Mediation is an attempt at solving a problem, but if at the end of a mediation the parties still can't agree, it has to go on to something else. In the legal world, which is what I'm familiar with, it would go on to arbitration, in which case the problem is heard by a committee, and they render a decision which is applicable to both parties, and the parties have no more say in it other than what their presentation was. Now, how do we train mediators? From my research, mediation is looked upon as a career choice. You want to make a business of your mediation, and you want to earn money doing it. Consequently, all the organizations that offer mediation training offer it over a course of several days, and they're going to charge you at a minimum between $1,000 and $2,000 a person to get the training. And it's available from a lot of different organizations, including the main organization. And after that, you become a certified mediator, and then they tell you how to go about setting up your business, and they offer you many, many resources. I don't know if we want to go in that direction. That would be a good outlay of money, and we would have to also designate certain people who would be taking the training and would be assigned as mediators, who could be called upon by various clubs, regions, etc., to try and settle problems. I also looked at a lot of YouTube videos. Many of them gave scenarios, many of them showed the processes, but again, it's all with the aim of becoming a business and making money for yourself. But the scenarios are invaluable because they do show you what works and what doesn't. Okay, then I went to books. I'm a librarian. This is my heritage. What I came up with, and I showed it to Eric is something called the Mediator's Handbook. Came out in 2012, I believe. And what it does is it talks you through the process of mediation. It gives you scenarios. It gives you nice little charts here. It discusses the different aspects, and it even goes on to try and explain to you how to deal with different parties who are mediating. For example, how do you deal with people who are of different ages, of different generations, of different status? And it's pretty darn good. I've read through about half of it. So my suggestion at this point would be, it's about $35, which I hope would fit into our financial heritage here, which has just been so wonderfully explained. I'd like to get copies of these, first of all, obviously for my committee, which I should mention is Kathy Blake of the Ontario Club and Larry Madden of Arkansas Razorbacks. And I also think this might be a good thing to share with our region presidents. And if our region presidents feel it is important enough, perhaps they could share it with their vice presidents. I don't know if we want to go as low as club presidents, but actually the individual club presidents are our first line of settling disputes, particularly if it's between members of one club. So that is what my suggestion for mediation training is. Of course, if we do want to spend the several $1,000s, that would be necessary to do more formal mediation training. I'm sure we could arrange something in a Zoom format. I know I've gone through several courses through the Cornell School of Labor and Employee Relations, and they do very good stuff. Of course, they're based in New York. So that would be a very secondary suggestion, again, if we find ourselves really wealthy and really want to go with this. And if we do formal mediation training, what I would suggest is not taking the entire IBT, but perhaps doing a few people who would volunteer to be trained as mediators who could be used by the individual clubs and regions when needed. And I see there are many questions.
Yes. So, okay. So we
Okay.
have Gary, then Millie, Terry, and Jenny.
Okay.
Good morning,
Hello,
Debbie.
Good morning.
I got a message email from a Region 2 member
Yeah.
yesterday. Or
Yep.
yeah, it was yesterday. And in the note, she said she talked to you, and I believe that there was a note that was also sent to Eric about a situation that involved a member from another region. And I was sent the email, or not the email, but they were on another Facebook service. And at that point in
Yeah.
time, there were conversations that went back and forth. And this
If I
particular,
could interrupt, Gary. Yeah, I spoke to this person and I also got comments from everyone on my committee. The thing is, what this person would be is troubled about is her personal privacy, which she feels was violated by someone in Airstream Addicts. We do have a privacy policy, which I found after much research. Our privacy policy was written, I believe, in 2014. And since the rise of social media, it's really totally out of date.
correct.
Yeah. She
The
could,
only
of
thing
course,
I have
grieve.
to say is that I reached out to Nancy
Yeah.
Fitzgerald, because that particular member is in her region. And Nancy and I had a conversation follow up after I looked at the series of messages that went back and forth. And I believe that this particular person, and Nancy, you can correct me, has a history of issues.
Yeah, she said she didn't like the person.
And I believe the person has also had interaction with Eric. So I don't know if, obviously this is, we've got two issues. One would be that the privacy policy has to be severely updated. And
Yes.
the other aspect is that I don't know how we would handle someone that is, in my case, is not in my region, so I don't have any direct interaction with her, but other people would.
This would be a perfect thing for a mediator, actually, to sit these two people down together, whether it's on Zoom or whatever, and say, let's see if we can work this out. There is no, and
Actually, I wanted to just be
Mary is
mindful of
trying.
time, you guys, and also we're getting a little bit deep into something that's
Oh,
somewhat private.
okay, let's talk another time, yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, everyone, if you're wondering, the privacy policy, it's on the leadership portal, by the way.
Yeah.
If you go to leadership portal, we just launched, it's down there under, I just saw it actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's down there under assorted, so you can get it there and it's 2016. But
Yeah,
thanks,
that's
Gary. Thanks,
true.
Debbie. Thanks, Nancy. This is an evolving thing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are learning more in the last 24 hours, frankly. So it's a
Mhm.
serious thing that we need to figure out a path through. So thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Millie and then Carrie and then Jenny.
Okay.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Debbie, for all your work on this. And it was nice to see you in Florida.
Yes, it
last
was.
week. I have two questions. One related to the update of the privacy policy. We certainly want to, if you need help working on that, I would sacrifice myself. I think we need to talk about, at some point, we need to talk about how information in the Blue Beret or in the directory is shared or not shared, as it may be. The other question is regarding the mediation book that you introduced. Have you researched whether or not it's available in Kindle format or online format, which oftentimes is as much as half the cost of the book and could be shared a little easier through multiple people? So just a suggestion.
I can certainly take a look at that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Millie. Terry and then Jenny, and then we'll probably try to move on. I have another question for Debbie before she leaves.
Okay. Hi, Terry.
Hi, Debbie. So I have a couple of questions. Might we try to see if there are any mediators within this club that would be willing to work with issues like this? And second, how often does this really happen that you need a mediator?
Okay, we don't really know. But there are many problems that arise between basically two individuals who are disagreeing on something. And if you could have a third party sit down with them and work it out before it grows into a bigger situation, that would be where a mediator would be called in.
So one option might be to have a mediator, whether there's someone in the club or someone outside of the club, be available to do that task rather than, and I don't know how much mediators cost.
And mediators can cost at least somewhere between $200 and $800 a day. Because again, mediation is this person's business.
Right. Do you
I want to keep this going. So there'll be more discussion on this, by the way, but I wanted Debbie to introduce this concept of mediation and get some initial feedback from the board. Jenny?
Quick question. Is Caroline Packard the author of the Mediator's Handbook?
Yes.
Okay, if you go
and Jennifer
we can get 9 copies for $37. And that's because there's a website, called thriftbooks.com. And I just looked on it and I can right now just click buy. So there, it's not going to be an expense. I would think that would be pretty simple.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, so now back to action items. So Debbie, so great report. Just it's in the board book, the Ethics and Grievance Standing Committee report. There are some proposed amendments to our policies. I think what we're probably going to do on this one is that we'll get it written into a formal motion and then we can get it voted on by the board later, and we can do it electronically as well. But I wanted you to introduce it and Thanks, everyone. If you have specific inputs
Okay,
or
great.
questions to the policy, like always, get back to Debbie. And Debbie, thank you so much for you and your group. And by the way, there's like
You're
3 or
welcome.
4 going on right now in our club that I would categorize that have a need for mediation or something.
Mediation.
Unfortunately, become a thing in
Okay,
our nation. So thank you so much, Debbie, for joining us. Say
you're
hi to
welcome.
Mark, and I'll see you down the road somewhere.
Sure will.
Okay, the next item is historical. I don't know, we have a report also in there, but that's just a report only. And next, we're at the stage of member comment on non-agenda items. Lori or Terry, do we have any member comments that have come in from our website or emails?
I haven't seen them, but Lori's nodding her head, so she looks like she has.
Nothing more than what I shared with you, Eric.
I don't remember what that was. So I apologize.
There's a question for clarification on the international rally now being used to fund the international club. Is that why the international rally fees are so high?
No, that's not, that, I already answered that when I told Gail we would get back with her. Those Q&As, this is prior to through job form. It was the one about the Constitution or something. Brad Briggs answered, the gentleman. I forget who sent it in, but
Oh, yes, we had so just to be clear, we had a question that came in a couple of days ago. And the question was, in the discussion that we're going to be having later on 10.4 constitutional change, does that impact the local clubs? Brad, since it came up, do you want to just give your answer? Just everyone is in the transparent on this, please.
Yes, it does not impact the local clubs or interclubs. The name change to fiscal director, the proposed change, just reflects the duties that we're expecting at this level of the club, and there's no impact on the lower levels.
Thanks, Brad. And Nancy, I see your hand, but just a second. So Lori Plummer, you mentioned something about someone had a comment about IR costs. Can you just answer that in public, please? 'Cause I think it's important to prevent any rumors.
well, okay. So the question is, Gail asked, is now being used to fund the international club. It has been funding the international club for several years, for multiple years, and our fees are based on market and location is how our fees are based. Things have changed over the last several years to where we're selling sponsorships and things of that nature, which is helping our bottom line bring funds into the club.
All right. Thank you. All right, Nancy.
Quick question back to the heritage number policy. I had a member ask, when the heritage
We're not there yet.
Oh, I thought you were finished. Sorry. I'll wait.
Almost.
Okay, sorry.
Hold tight. You're almost there. So any other questions from member comments on non-agenda items? No, I think we're clear with that. And again, just to be clear, is that we have an ability for our members, and we want to hear from you. If you go to our airstreamclub.org/IBT page, there's a couple links there on how you email questions to the board, or also how you can fill out a form. And we look at those, we report those out. So get your comments there if they don't come up to your region president.
Eric, just so you know, the Q&A, Chris Olson is clarifying the privacy policy on the MailChimp that you talked about, the linking. And my answer was that yes, their email would still be involved in the communication from their club. They're willing, they will have the option to opt out, but other members will not see email lists. So it's whoever's operating it. That's the difference between MailChimp and just you sending something from your mail carrier. But I will make sure that clarification is asked with the team.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Lori. All right, now we're going to move to consent items, and we have one topic on consent heritage number policy, and we have questions or comments. Nancy, now it's you.
You're ready, Joe. May need to
Quick question. So a member had asked, when heritage numbers were first introduced, the numbers referred to trailers and not people. Is that changing? Is the number going to continue to remain with a hysterical trailer? But it also looks like it's going to be assigned to specific club members. Is there a difference? Is something changing?
I cannot answer that with great certainty. Does anyone on this answer this? No.
Joe is on the line. Would you like us to allow him to speak?
Yes.
Do I need to ask it again?
No, hang on. Stand by. Joe, are you on the line? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I think I've turned on my camera, but it's not showing.
Oh, we can hear you. Can you answer
Okay.
Nancy's question?
Yeah, so the background on heritage numbers, if you read the motion in the report, this was always something that was part of the initial concept of heritage. And yes, the original version was numbers that were actually assigned to trailers, but we were always recognizing the people that did something in those trailers. So at this point, the heritage number policy that is in effect recognizes the people that took these trailers and did the three major caravans that we've recognized: 1956 Europe, 1959-60 Africa, and 1963-64 around the world. So if you look in the back of your membership directory, you will see those people's names against the heritage numbers that have been assigned. In this case, there always was the intent to do this, and we just have gotten around to piecemealing it, to recognize people that have made a very significant contribution to this club that cannot be recognized because they didn't take a specific airstream on a caravan. Four of the ones that would most likely apply this to would be Wally Byam, Helen Byam Schwamborn, Andy Charles, and Art Costello, that founded Airstream and the club, but we've already been able to recognize them under other policies. There are very few, but a few that I think are worthy of this. And the example I happened to use was I can't think of their last name at the moment. The people that organized the China caravans, they spent 3 years developing these, and they brought great publicity to the club. But because those caravans used special airstreams that were not bearing their own big red numbers, we cannot recognize them under that policy. So I think in this case, the concept of recognizing the people that did the contributions is still there, but the way we recognize them has changed. And we're talking about, if we approve this policy, I can think of maybe 3 names the historical committee might consider putting forward. This is not going to be a floodgate of new heritage numbers.
Thank you so much. That's a beautiful, beautiful answer.
Thank you, Joe. All right, any
Yep.
other questions before we vote on this one? All right, so it's a consent item. So Terry?
After this, I think you should have a break. Just a thought.
Yeah, I was planning to.
Thanks.
Okay, so this is a consent item. So without objection, this motion passes as written. Are there any objections? All right, it passes. Thank you, Joe, for all the work your team has done. By the way, it's a great looking team, by the way, and thank you for, as always, a very good report. All right, so we're gonna take a 5-minute break, just 5, actually 7. So we'll be back at 9:40, and we'll start again at 9:40 a.m. Pacific. All right, so that's actually 7 or 8 minutes. All right, thanks. Turn off your audio if you don't want us to hear. Okay, we'll start in a minute and a half. And Terry, when we start, I'll ask that you just re-update the roll, noting exceptions. And if you could also record the minutes that sort of who's present when we reconvene, please.
Got it.
All right, and Brad, when we reconvene, you're first up, by the way.
Eric, I'm gonna brag for a minute. I beat all you guys to the punch and I got to meet Kendall when I was in Florida. Haha.
I don't know what to say, Millie, but we'll get a gold star made for you, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And by the way, thanks Bob and Sean, the VPs, for stepping in. It's really important for that continuity. I really appreciate the, I would imagine, short notice. So, alrighty, Terry, we're 9:41 Pacific. If you could just check where we are on the roll call as we reconvene.
Eric, with your permission, I'll just use names rather than titles for this reconvening.
Perfect.
Eric McHenry,
Present.
Millie O'Donnell,
Present.
Hi Mott,
Present.
John Becker,
Present.
Jim Cock,
Present.
Kathy Giese,
Present.
Marcia Howes,
Present.
Jenny Schnettler,
Present.
Kendall Felder. Is Kendall back with us? Okay.
All right, keep going. We'll note when he joins.
Bart Fuller,
Present.
Gary Russo,
Present.
Bob Ely,
Present.
Fred Keel,
Present.
Artie Martin,
Present.
Jan Hevener,
Present.
Ginger Slattery,
Here.
Rick Everson,
Present.
Nancy Fitzgerald,
Here.
Lawrence Tremoni,
Present.
Stephen Parr,
Present.
John Bloom,
Present.
Lori Grassi,
Still good morning.
hi, Lori Plummer,
Present.
Brad Briggs.
All right, thanks,
Present.
Terry. Thanks
And-
everyone for coming back. All right, so the second half of our meeting now. All right, we are on item 10.1. This is a motion from Brad Briggs, housekeeping motion to remove reference to delegates meeting and ensure member participation. Brad, would you like to read the summary, please, and your motion?
Summary is this motion removes the reference to delegates from policy 18.11 as there is no longer a need for delegates. It also provides all members are advised of any proposed amendments. The motion, I move that WBCCI policy 18.11 timeline and method for handling proposed amendments to the International Constitution be amended to reflect the change from the delegate voting to a member voting on the constitutional change be approved as stated in Exhibit 1.
Thanks, Brad. This comes from committee, so does not require a second. Brad, if you could read purpose, impact, background, and financial impact.
The purpose of this motion is to remove unnecessary language from the amendments policy 18.1.1 to ensure that all members are involved in the amendment process. The impact is cleaning up the policy files language and clarifying member participation. The background: in the past, when there was a constitutional amendment to the WBCCI Constitution, the actual vote on the amendment was done at an annual delegates meeting, and the local club delegate carried the club's vote to the meeting. The new amendment policy provides for an electronic vote by the membership on any amendment, and no delegate involvement exists. there's no financial impact to WBCCI.
Thanks, Brad. Do we have any questions or comments or from the region presidents or is that council? Gary.
Yeah, in there, Brad, you don't have any option for other than electronic vote. And I think that you need to have other options available. I know that in previous years, you would be able to contact Jackson Center and they would send you a vote that could be done as a mail-in. I think that's what was done in the previous year, because we have a number of people within my region that do not want an electronic footprint. So they do not get any of the electronic messaging that comes from corporate headquarters. I think we need to address that in this process.
Tell you what, Gary, and everybody on the committee, when you have questions like that, if you can bring that up ahead of time when the agenda comes out, we can work on language so you can make an amendment at the time to the motion. My suggestion is that since this is something that's voted on by the IBT, if you don't mind, we can just move this forward and then we can look at it, revising it for the next IBT to include that.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Gary, Lori, I think, has a comment on the process that is used in electronic voting, I think. Go ahead, Lori.
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment, Eric. Thank you. Yes, for the last 3 years, we've had paper ballots available to our membership, and we have had 1 per year requested. So we do not have members asking for paper ballots in a mass form at all.
All right, any other questions or comments for Brad before I bring this up take us to vote?
I think that because we're now moving to a no longer a delegate, but to a membership, you're going to have that coming into play more. You know, obviously, Brad and I, we need to talk offline to negotiate how we're going to go through this as a paper ballot.
Okay, any other comments or from the board? All right, Brad, as motion maker, what's your preference on what we do next? Do you want to take it to vote? Do you want to defer it? What's your preference?
If we could go ahead and take it to vote, and then Gary and I can work on some additional language we can bring back to the body next time.
Okay, so first we'll see, without objection, this motion passes as is. Is there objection to the motion as written? If so, raise your hand. Okay, we have an objection, timeout. All right, so let's do a roll call vote if you could, Terry.
Harry, you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry. Region President Bard Fuller.
I support.
So let's do yes or no. Would that be good?
Okay, yes.
Got it. Region 6 President Jan Hevener.
Yes.
EC member John Becker. You're muted, John.
Yes.
Thank you. EC member Jenny Schnettler.
Yes.
Region 11 President Stephen Parr.
Yes.
Region 8 President Rick Everson.
Yes.
So Bob Ely for Christine Bum.
Yes.
Sean Bloom for Abe Hernandez.
Yes.
EC member Jim Cock.
Yes.
EC member Kathy Giese.
Yes.
Region 5 President Artie Martin.
Yes.
Region 2 President Gary Russo.
As it's written right now, no.
Thank you. Immediate past President Ty Mott,
No.
Vice President Millie O'Donnell.
Yes.
I vote yes. Okay, EC member Marcia Howes,
Yes.
Region 4 President Fred Keel,
Yes.
EC member Kendall Felder. Oh, is Kendall back?
No.
Kendall is not back. There is a board member with just a phone symbol here. I don't know about that one. We'll leave that for now. Excuse me, Region 7 President Ginger Slattery.
Yes.
Region 9 President Nancy Fitzgerald.
No.
Region 10 President Florence Tremoni.
Yes.
Did I miss anybody? Okay. Yes. 3 no. Motion passes.
All right, thank you, Terry. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, IBT. By the way, just a heads up.
I'm sorry, Kendall we're trying to move him.
That's okay, Laura. We already voted. We're done.
Okay, well, he voted yes.
All right, well,
yes, thank you.
We're done on that one. All right, by the way, just a heads up, another one from Brad Briggs, and then we're going to shift 10.4 next. So we'll do 10.4, then 10.3, but we'll get to it next. All righty, next one is 10.2. Brad Briggs again, a revision of region board structure and identifying the succession of region officers. All right, Brad, would you like to read the motion, please?
The summary is that this motion revises and clarifies the structure and appointment responsibilities of the region boards in the WBCCI, defines the responsibilities of the appointment, executive council members, and clarifies succession of region officers. I move that WBCC bylaws, Article 9, Region, Section 2, be amended with the new Part D be inserted with the relettering of the remaining parts of Section 2, clarifying the structure and appointment responsibilities of region boards, defining the responsibilities of the appointment, executive council members, and clarifying succession of region officers to be appointed as stated in Exhibit 1.
All right, thanks, Brad. This comes from committee, so no second is required. Brad, give purpose and impact, and then I think you suggested you may have some proposed minor amendments, but let's see how we go with that. So talk us through that.
The purpose of the motion is to clarify the structure of a region board and establish a defined responsibilities of the region president regarding executive council appointees. The motion eliminates the ambiguity about the responsibilities of the region president. It also defines the responsibilities of the region treasurer and secretary. It also provides a mechanism for the succession and removal of an elected region officer. The impact of this is to address the recommendation of Robert's rules that any organization operating under the Constitution and bylaws with elected officers provide a method for the removal of the officers. Background. The current wording of the WBCCI bylaws, Article 9, regarding the structure of the region board and region executive council is ambiguous in relationship to the appointees to the region board, as well as the involvement of all the region elected officers to the selection of the appointees. There is also no clear statement of the responsibility of the region appointees to the region board, and motion addresses both issues. Furthermore, the recent revision of the WBCCI bylaws, Article 8, a provision was inserted to allow for the removal of elected officers at the international level, but no similar provision was provided for the removal of region officers. This motion addresses this omission. There is no impact to WBCCI.
Thanks, Brad. And I understand that at least one of the board got feedback to Brad before the meeting. Can you share what that is? And do you want to incorporate that into your motion, Brad?
Marty, I believe, has an amendment to this motion. I'll let him speak about that.
Okay, Brad. And I go by Artie.
I'm sorry, Artie. I thought that's what I said. Apologize.
Yes. I move to amend motion item number 2024-04 titled Revision of Region Board Structure and Identifying the Succession of Region Officers.
And what is that change?
In the proposed language for bylaws, Article 9, Section 2, Part H2, at the beginning of the sentence, add to fill an unexpired term. So then Part H2 will read as to fill an unexpired term. The open elected office or offices of vice presidents shall be filled by a majority vote of the region board from nominees submitted by the region nominations committee. I suggested this change to definitely separate the two procedures of a normal region election or just backfilling an unexpired term.
Okay, thanks, Artie. Let's capture any other suggestions or comments, and then we'll see if we can move this forward as amended or if we have to do some more work on it. Gary?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Hey,
President, has this been seconded yet?
No second required is from a committee, I believe.
No, she means the amendment.
Yeah, the motion has to be seconded before you can go to an amendment.
No, this comes from a committee and no seconds required.
Okay, so technically it has been seconded. Thank you.
Thanks.
And then
All right, Gary?
amendment.
Yeah, Brad, down at the bottom in section, well, it's your last paragraph that reads elected officers serve. And my concern is that when you get to the point of officer can be removed from office, I would recommend that you have in there for cause. And then we need to describe what the cause would be.
Okay, I'm just going to gather input and then we'll see where we are in this, okay? And we may have to go through a formal revision amendment process, Gary, which requires a vote in a second and blah, blah, blah. But let's just get some comments first to see where we are as a board, all right? So hold tight, I haven't forgotten you. Nancy?
Clarifying, Brad, the 2/3 vote to remove the region officer, the president, is that 2/3 of the membership? Or is that the executive region board, or is that just the region board? Is there, am I understanding?
That's the region board, Nancy. They're the ones who are deciding that.
And the region board is the local club presidents, not just the executive. So
that is correct.
Basically, the membership 2/3 would have to decide because they vote through their president.
Right.
If that's the way the policy is at a region. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments before we go into the amendment phase on this? Okay, so let me try to take this in order. And I'm trying not to overly complicate this, but to get to the result of everyone understanding. And so Artie's amendment, I think, Brad, you're accepting as is. Is that accurate? Okay,
that is correct.
The motion now that we're talking about is one that includes the amendment by Artie. Okay, so that's that. That's what we're going to be talking about. Now, Gary Russo, you have an amendment you'd like to suggest?
Right. When we get into the section of elected officers serve, I would like to see that recast, that sentence, so that it brings in for cause, because basically you're open-ended on what the reason would be. My first and second were talking about it last night, and they said, well, we could just vote you out. You know, the two of us. And so I would recommend that we put in there removed for cause. And then somewhere along the line, we need to talk about the criteria that would be for their removal.
Brad, how do you want to handle that feedback?
So Gary, do you have exact wording that you think it needs to be?
At this point, we were talking about it at 10 o'clock last night. So I really haven't had a chance to come up with a recast of that paragraph.
I really, without talking to you further, I really don't know how to proceed from here. Again, this is being voted on by the IBT. We can go as it is and then amend it later, or we can table it and bring it back. So
I would like to table it.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to follow Roberts on this one just to kind of get us through this. And so when someone proposes an amendment, then we need to get a second on the amendment. So Gary's amendment language, and then the board will vote on whether to accept that amendment. And if that's the case, then that is now the amended text, which is a little bit vague, but that's okay. And then we'll just see what happens. Or the board can vote no on the amendment proposed by Gary, and then we'll vote on the original motion. Does that make sense? So we're going to see if there's a second for Gary Russo Region 2's amendment proposal. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay, so Timot seconds that Gary Russo amendment. Now we'll vote on whether the board accepts the amendment as proposed by Gary Russo. And just to be clear, it's a vote, but the board votes for the amended, then that will be the motion that will move forward. If the board votes against the amendment proposed by Gary Russo, then the board will vote on the original one. Make
Doesn't
sense?
Roberts allow us to comment on this before we vote?
Yes, please go ahead and comment.
Thank you. Jim Cock, EC. Gary, I don't think he meant to, but he misspoke when he and his 1 and 2 were saying, hey, 1 and 2 could just vote out the region president. That's not what this language says in H2. It says the region board, which, as Nancy very well clarified, that's the board made up of all the presidents of the local clubs, plus the officers of that region. So it would not be the 1 and 2 voting you out unless they did a good job of campaigning and politicking before the meeting, and then they carried it, of course. Just a clarification there.
Yeah, it wasn't, we were just, at that point, we were just, I think, a little slap happy at that time of the evening, and we were just getting, commentary was happening. I just wanted to say that.
So we're continuing with comments on the Russo amendment before we vote on the Russo amendment. All right, other comments on the Russo amendment? I see Terry, and then Millie, and then Jenny, and then John, and then Ginger. So
I am unclear about the amendment that we're voting upon. Can you clarify?
Terry, would you restate your proposed amendment?
What I'm saying is that section number 4 would be recast, and that when we get down to be removed from office, that it would be removed for cause. And then at some other point, we need to come up with the criteria for removal.
That seems to me a little vague. I get the first part clearly. Would you be comfortable with it being removed for cause? Being the only thing, because that's the only clear thing that I'm hearing.
Right. Well, at this point, we have to come up with the reasons for it. Otherwise, you could come up for any reason for cause. I want to be able to identify what the cause would be. If it's, lack of leadership, lack of performance of duties, at this point, that's where I would want to sit down and talk to Brad about that, because I don't know, would that be something that would fall into the bylaws, or would it be something that would be attached to this motion?
Okay, so I think we understand the generalist. I think I'm going to probably come back to our parliamentarian in a little bit, decide if we have a concrete enough amendment to vote on. But let's get the rest of the comments in. So Terry, Millie?
Yeah, Gary, actually, I'm on a committee on the election nuts and bolts, and that's exactly one of the things that we're working on now is the wording on, I believe it's Article 8, Section 11, Paragraph 3 says for cause, and we decided that we need to clarify a little bit on there, which will carry forward to this eventually. And the things that we're considering putting in there, we're just finalizing it in the next week or so, are things like failure to perform the duties, or a fiscal irresponsibility, not doing the actual job. We're going to list some things, but also put in the phrase, but not limited to, because as you can imagine, it's not often that someone gets removed from office. I don't know historically if it's even happened before. We certainly don't want to do it by anybody playing politics or anybody doing a popularity contest. In the event someone is removed from office, it needs to be a very serious consideration, and we will list out a sampling of, for example, what the causes are to prevent exactly what you're saying. So we do see
Right,
your.
and I mean, like if I were in a job situation, usually you get a couple of warnings that you're not performing. When you have your performance review, you get put on a warning track or something of that nature.
Okay, I'm going to continue to get comments because we're in the middle of this process now. So Ginger, John, Jenny, and then Ty. And then I'm going to, after that, ask Lori Grassi, our parliamentarian, that given how it's been stated verbally, is that sufficient enough for us to vote on that amendment, right? Because typically amendments have specific language. All right, Jenny, John, Jenny, so Ginger, John, Jenny, and Ty.
Okay, my question wasn't regarding the Russo proposal, so if I
Hold tight then. Yeah, this is just on the Russo amendment proposal.
Okay, and I'll wait until you
Thank you.
Another one.
And by the way, just so you guys know, this is complicated. If the Russo proposal fails for whatever reason, then we'll go back to discussion on the original one. All right. Okay, John, Jenny, Ty.
My comment on the amendment is, while it might drive poor Brad crazy, I think we have this amendment and another one that was mentioned by region presidents that are valid. And without something written in front of me, I don't feel comfortable voting either way. And I think the region presidents have a lot of skin in this game. We've heard two potential good amendments, and I'm sorry, Brad, but I would just say, I don't, without something written in front of me, I'm not trying to answer what Lori would say. I just don't feel comfortable, voting on it when it's been verbal.
Okay, Jenny and then Ty.
Well, that's exactly what I was about to say. Thank you, John. I since we can't really seem to nail down the wording perfectly, I'm not really feeling comfortable saying I want to have a vote one way or the other. So it's really important. Maybe what we want to do is take the time to nail it down.
Yep.
Ty?
Well, yeah, if we're going to have a decision on the other from Millie on at the EC level or the international level, I think that it would be important that we table this until we get the wording correctly and do it correctly. So we're not passing something, then going back through and passing it again. Let's just table it for the time being.
Yes.
Okay, so now I need a definitive answer from our parliamentarian, Lori. So we've obviously got a motion that's been seconded from the standing committee, and we have a second motion that's been seconded as an amendment. What are our choices here?
Well, Robert's chapter 5629 allows for and even says it's preferable to permit removal of officers only for cause through disciplinary proceedings, and it goes on. So there is support in Roberts for the language, and it could easily be inserted if I say this carefully because Brad is way better at I'm good at putting words out there and he's better at organizing them. So at the risk of doing this on the fly, it could easily be inserted in section 4, elected officers serve for 2 years or until their successors are elected, or officers can, the officers can be removed for cause from office by region board adoption of a motion to do so. It does fit in there easily. This doesn't usually happen this way. So I mean, Brad, you're the maker of the motion. So it's really, Mr. President, up to the maker of the motion to accept that language or decline.
So when Gary was speaking, that's where I inserted it also. I don't have a problem with that. It's the other part where Gary says we have to define what the causes are, and there's no way we can do that at this meeting.
I think the motion should stand independent to its action because the motion is really about this. The process by which you would go through removing, to me, would include you might want to have your grievance chair there, the CBL chair, and the people on the special elections committee that Millie referenced to further define that process, but that stands independent of this motion. You have a process now to remove officers. It's vague and it's a simple 2/3 majority by the IBT, but it's very innocuous. So it's really up to those to define that process later if you feel the current process is not clear enough, but it stands independent of the motion.
Okay, so thank you, Laurie. Again, I'm trying to figure out our next legislative steps through this. We have an amendment motion on the table from Region 2, and we have the original motion. So my assumption is we need to vote on the amendment by Russo, see if that passes. And then if it does, we'll figure out the next steps on voting on the original one as amended by Brad. So it's kind of confusing. By the way, this is why we really like to have y'all get your input to the motion maker before, I have to say. Millie, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to make a clarification so that everybody understands. The election committee that I'm on, the items that we're working on will directly affect the bylaws and the how we do things, like Tom says, not the Constitution, but the actual bylaws. So if you hypothetically passed the motion as it was originally written, it still would be guided by or governed by what's in the rule book. So you would still have to have a cause, and they will be listed. There will be a sampling. You can't possibly list all of them.
Right.
So by passing the original is not going to ignore what Gary's saying, which is a very valid point. That's why we're changing the wording, because we've already recognized it needs to be done. But this won't eliminate that. Does that make sense?
Okay, I want to take this to vote because we got to move through this, right? I don't want to leave it in limbo. And so I think my next option is that I'm going to ask the board to vote on the Russo amendment. I'm sorry, Bard? Can you?
Let me unmute myself. Yeah, I'm still kind of confused if I vote for or against the Russo, or if I vote against the Russo amendment, is that defeating this, or can it still be tabled?
Yeah, okay. So if the board votes against the Russo amendment, that amendment dies. Okay, and then we'll bring it back to the board to vote on the original Briggs motion, which has been successfully amended by Martin. And then you guys can decide whether you want that to go forward or not. Does that make sense?
What?
Any other substantive comment on this before we go to a vote? Terry, Nancy?
I'm wondering if, Gary, you would agree to add the word cause for cause, but not for your amendment, to keep it simple, and then elaborate on those causes at a later time.
Well, I think I agree with that from the fact that Millie is in another point in the bylaws is addressing the causes. And that was what I said originally toward the end when I was talking to Brad, the fact that, we have to have causes, and I don't know if they end up going into the bylaws. So it looks like from what you're telling me, the causes are being collected in the bylaws, but I still would want to be removed for cause.
Okay, so your amendment boils down into adding for cause. Is that correct, Gary? Just trying to simplify this.
Exactly what Lori had read from Robert's rule.
So that will be what we'll vote on next, on that amendment. Nancy and then Artie?
How do we vote if we want to table this whole thing so Brad can rework it?
Well, the motion maker gets to table it. And so right now the amendment maker is Russo. So until he tables it, you have to vote on it.
Thank you.
Artie?
Well, Gary took the words out of my mouth. We're going to vote on an amendment that will work today. And it worked yesterday and it'll work tomorrow. For cause being the verbiage that's in it, we always can go back and amend this procedure at our next meeting, or since we could have a conversation about it, we can change this amendment even if we vote on it today and we don't feel like it's complete. We can develop the reasons for cause and then add it to the amendment. So voting for it today doesn't stop us in the future.
Okay, thanks. So we're going to go to vote now. And so the amendment that Russo is offering is that we add for cause. And so we're going to vote on that. So without objection, the amendment to the Briggs motion passes, which adds with cause. So any objections to that from the board? Okay, so now the Briggs motion adds the earlier Martin amendment, and it adds for cause. Okay, so now we're voting on the whole thing. Feels like we're voting twice, but just to be clear. So without objection, the total motion from Briggs will move forward as amended. And the amendments are the Martin amendment and the Russo amendment. Okay, so without objection, that passes. Any objections to that? Okay, Becker, we have an objection. So now we're going to do a roll call. Terry, do a roll call on the motion as amended by Martin and by Russo.
Understood. Thank you. So a yes, no, please, on the amendment, on the motion as amended. Region 9, Nancy Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Region 2, Gary Russo.
Yes.
EC member Kathy Giese.
Yes.
Region 7, Ginger Slattery.
Yes.
Region 6, Jan Hevener.
Yes.
EC member Marcia Howes.
Yes.
Region 8, Rick Everson.
Yes.
Region 4, Fred Keel.
Yes.
EC member Jim Cock.
Yes.
Region 5, Artie Martin.
Yes.
Region 10, Florence Tremoni.
Yes.
Immediate past president Ty Mott.
Okay, I want to say no.
Region 12, Sean Bloom.
Yes.
Vice President Millie O'Donnell.
Yes.
EC member Kendall Felder. I know he's having a hard time.
Yes, yes.
Oh, you're here. Oh, great, great, great. I will vote yes. Region 11, Stephen Parr.
Yes.
Region 3, Bob Ely.
Yes.
Region 1, Bard Fuller.
Yes.
EC member John Becker.
No.
EC member Jenny Schnettler.
Yes.
All yeses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All yeses, 2 noes, the motion passes. Except for 2 noes, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Brad, so good job. And thank you, Artie. Thank you, Gary. For my opinion, for whatever it's worth, great suggestions. Brad, just for clarification, can you, once you update the motion, it will be in the minutes, of course, but can you also send it to our corporate manager and clerk and Terry, and then we'll get that out to the IBT just so you all can see the final language sooner than having to wait 2 or 3 months. All right?
Yes.
Okay, thank
I'll
you
do
all
that.
for that. Okay. Whew. Okay, good. We're getting through this. So now we're taking item 10.4 out of order, and this is in the interest of time for all you guys. And this is the motion, constitutional change of the makeup of WBCCI International Treasurer's position. All right, so just as a reminder, hang on a second, Bob. I see your hand up. Hang on a second. Just as a reminder, probably around 6 months ago, I asked that a special committee be formed, led by Christine Baum and by Florence to take a look at our election processes, both how we talk about the election, how we vote for the election, anything we need to tweak in the positions. And Florence took on the responsibility as part of the special committee with a group of people to come forward with a proposal to the board. And this is that proposal coming out of the special committee, started about 6 months ago. So before we go into yours, Bob, I see your hand up.
Yes, Christine is available now. So if you all will recognize her, I'll drop off and she can take her proper position.
Excellent. Just to make sure we can hear you, Christine, are you there?
We're promoting her right now, Eric.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. We'll wait till she's fully on.
Sure, absolutely.
Christine, when you're on, just well, I can see your face there. So obviously, Terry, on the note, you could record that President Baum has stepped in.
I'm here.
Great. Thank you. All righty, over to you, Florence, if you could give the summary and the motion, please.
Yeah, the title, thank you, Eric. The title is the constitutional change of the makeup of WBCCI International Treasurer position summary. This constitutional change replaces the position of treasurer with finance director and establishes the position as a non-voting officer elected by the EBT from the general membership. Additionally, it standardizes IBT in place of the different names for the International Board of Trustees in these two articles. Motion. I move that WBCCI Constitution Article 8, Board of Trustees, Article 7, Board of Trustees, and Article 8, Executive Council be amended to replace the position of Treasurer with Finance Director as a non-voting officer, name how this position is seated, and housekeeping use of IBT as stated in Exhibit 1.
Thanks, Florence. Do we have a second for the motion? Okay, I recognize, I think Jim Cock was first. All right, so it is seconded. If you could give purpose, impact, and background, please, Florence.
Purpose and impact. The purpose of this motion is to establish a new office called the Finance Director to replace the existing treasurer position. The IBT shall elect a qualified candidate from the general membership for this position after the existing Recruitment Oversight Committee invites applications and a governance committee vets the applicants for a slate of no more than 3. The impact of this motion will not change the number of votes on the IBT. All voting members of the IBT, and therefore all representation, are elected by the membership. The IBT will elect the non-voting finance director from an all call to the general club membership. Background. In the past, WBCCI International Treasurer was chosen by the third vice president upon taking office and ultimately approved by the membership with only a single name on the ballot. Then in 2021, the members approved a change in the election process, and now the position is filled by the IBT from members elected to the Executive Council who have had at least one term, 2 years, of experience on the IBT. With the recent growth and complexity of WCCI's financial state and the importance of ensuring long-term financial stability, transparent reporting, regulatory compliance, risk management, budgetary control, operational efficiency, and strategic decision-making, having someone with extensive financial background for this position is crucial. The current election process for executive officers may not always result in the most capable person being elected. By making the finance director, formerly known as the International Treasurer, elected by the IBT, we can ensure that the most qualified person fills the role. Additionally, removing the term restrictions currently imposed will allow the finance director to maintain longevity in the position for consistency and benefit the club with institutional memory. Every 2 years, near the midterm of the EC, the IBT shall reaffirm the tenure of the finance director with a simple majority vote of confidence. And there is no financial impact to the club.
Thanks, Florence. Before we go into discussion, since this is a constitutional amendment, which is new to a lot of us, can you just briefly talk through the next steps? If the board passes this, what are the next steps in timing to get this to the members to vote on, please?
Yeah, what we've actually discussed this quite a bit in the subcommittee for the rules of the road for elections. What we hope to do when this motion passes is bring it up at the strategy meeting and talk as a group how we can best educate the general membership, well, starting at local club presidents and then out to the general membership about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're going to do it. This must be voted on by the entire membership. We would call for a vote probably in late June which gives us 4 months for that education process. And 20%, well, the way the rules are now, 20% of our membership must show up to vote, and a 2/3, it would take 2/3 of that 20% for it to pass.
Thanks, Florence. Okay, so let's open up for any questions.
Eric, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a 248-420-4512 number that just popped on our screen. Can you please identify yourself?
This is Joe Peplinski. I had to leave my computer, so I just called in so I could continue to listen to the meeting.
Okay, Joe.
All right, so we'll have some discussion and then we'll go to vote. Any questions or comments from the exec council or from the region presidents? Lori, do we have any member comments?
No, sir.
Okay, well, so let me just try this. So without objection, this motion passes as written. Any objections to the motion as written? All right. Oh, wait, I see a hand. Ginger, objection or question? Objection?
You're muted.
Sorry, of objection. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go to our roll call then. We're getting good at that now. Thank you.
All right, ready? So this is yes or no on the motion. EC member Kendall Felder.
Yes.
Region 8, Rick Everson.
Yes.
EC member Kathy Giese.
Yes.
Region 7, Ginger Slattery.
No.
Region 1, Bart Fuller.
Yes.
EC member John Becker.
Yes.
Region 5, Artie Martin.
Yes.
Region 2, Gary Russo.
Yes.
EC member Jenny Schnettler.
Yes.
Region 9, Nancy Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Region 10, Florence Tremoni.
Yes.
Immediate past President Ty Mott.
Yes.
Region 12, member Sean Bloom.
Yes.
Region 4, Fred Keel.
Yes.
EC member Jim Cock.
Yes.
Region 11, Stephen Parr.
Yes.
Region 3, Christine Baum. Is Christine with us?
She appears frozen on the screen. Let's keep going.
I will vote yes and thank Florence and Christine for all this work. Region 6, Jan Hevener.
Yes.
Vice President Millie O'Donnell.
Yes.
EC member Marcia Howes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
So-
Christine is unfrozen now. Christine, are you ready to record your vote from the roll call? Alrighty. Oh, okay. So I think the roll call vote is ended. Terry, what are our results?
All yes, except one no. The motion
Okay.
passes.
Motion passes. Thank you, Florence. Thank you, team. I I don't know if you've kept track of the person hours that your team has worked on. And by the way, I have to say that I'm just really happy that you all work together this way, and with volunteers, non-IBT members as well, to work this through. I know it was a challenging process with a lot of different twists and turns. So thank you. And for the members out there, you will be hearing more about the specifics of this, as Florence mentioned, in the next couple of months. And that'll allow us to do a really good job of talking to the members, getting feedback, hearing their concerns, all that stuff. So thank you, Florence. Motion passed. All right, the next one, we go to Warren, confidentiality, non-disclosure, and conflict of interest agreements, item 10.3. Terry, if you could read the summary and the motion, please.
Yes. Am I still, okay. These agreements and the corresponding bylaws amendment and added policy will serve as the officially recognized guidance for club volunteers as the international level of how to handle confidential information about club business and the conflict of interest circumstances. Motion. I move that the proposed bylaw amendment to Article 8, Board of Trustees and Executive Council, Section 1, Part 6, and new policy 20-1, conduct policies be adopted as stated in Exhibit 1. Furthermore, the attached agreements for confidentiality and non-disclosure and conflict of interest agreements be adopted.
Thank you. Is there a second for the motion? All right, Councilmember Shetler, thank you. If you could read purpose, impact, and background if you choose to, or however you want to do it.
Purpose and impact. The Wally Byam Caravan Club is a nonprofit camping club incorporated in Ohio. Our primary goal is to provide our members with the best opportunities and benefits possible. To achieve this, we follow industry best practices, including agreements that keep sensitive information private until it's ready for public sharing. But we strive to be transparent. These bylaws amendments, new policies, and agreements are designed to protect sensitive data that is not yet ready for release, such as personnel issues or confidential financial information that is still under review. We may also need to sign confidentiality agreements with third-party contractors to protect their work. This policy provides clear guidelines for handling sensitive and privileged information that are easy to understand and follow. In addition, the WBCCI must be mindful of and effectively handle any conflicts of interest or any appearance of a conflict of interest. To achieve this goal, the conflict of interest policy and agreement have been created to assist the directors, officers, and volunteers of the WBCCI in identifying situations that may result in potential conflicts of interest. This policy also provides a procedure that can be followed to manage conflicts appropriately in accordance with legal requirements and promote accountability and transparency in the operations of the WBCCI. The impact of this motion requires the standing committee chairs or corresponding EC liaisons to ensure that current committee rosters are provided to the International Secretary if directed by the Executive Council to do so. The International Secretary is responsible for distributing the agreements and tracking compliance. Background. Currently, the WBCCI has no confidentiality and non-disclosure agreement within the club's policy. The confidentiality and non-disclosure agreement ensures the club is using best practices and specific steps to protect the club's information and integrity. The conflict of interest agreement will replace the agreement currently in place. The current conflict of interest agreement was dated January 23rd, 2020, and is located in the assorted guides and manuals of airstreamclub.org. The conflict of interest agreement helps to protect the club when directors, officers, or volunteers have dual interests that may harm it. There is no financial impact.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, now we're open for questions. First from the Exec Council. Like to hear your thoughts, and then from the region presidents. Marcia?
I heard the mention of compliance, but is there within the policy, and I only briefly read it, something to address if someone is unwilling or unable to sign the agreement?
There currently is not. We have discussed that. Currently, there is not.
Okay, it's Stephen and then Jim. Let's go in order of hands. Okay, Jim.
Yeah. Is it going to be I'm sorry. Is it going to be a blanket confidentiality statement, or is it for specific things we're going to entities?
I think that's a great question, and it is our intent to identify those discussions and agreements that will be held confidential so that it won't be that you won't know what should be confidential. They will be identified. Eric, is that correct? I think that's what we agreed upon, right? That these discussions that need to be held confidential will be marked so.
Yeah, I believe it's in the motion, actually. Jim?
Yeah. Having worked in corporate my whole career, this is a slam dunk. For us, it was one of the 7 cardinal things for which we would be immediately terminated. I don't see any argument on this. This is to protect our club in its negotiations, and it's not, as Stephen, good question. It's not blanket. It's where we are working on something that needs to be confidential until we will share it. And we will. Eric's done a good job of promoting how it's not a matter of what we're going to share, it's when we'll share it. Thank you.
Okay, so we have Ty and then Nancy and then Kathy.
I mean, we've worked this out before with having our closed sessions and stuff. We talk about being a transparent club, and when people go into closed sessions, our membership respected that. I don't see a need for this. I think we've worked out good for over 60 years doing this. We need to make it clear. When we have a closed session, that makes it very clear that the subject we're discussing is private and not out for public knowledge. So I don't understand why we need a confidentiality statement signed by people and how to get rid of them, but we've always respected it before.
Eric, can I respond to that?
Sure.
So I think that there are very specific reasons why now things have changed. Now we have agreements and partners, business partners, who expect that their agreement with us, as we work through it, will not be announced due to competition from others. I think Kathy Giese, your hand is up, and I hope that you'll also speak to this. We have had a breach already. And the reason I think that we have decided to put this forth is that confidential information that was to be not shared was shared. And I think that we need to put this in writing because now we have these business interests. And as Eric has said, it isn't what we will share, but when we will share it. As we work through these agreements with other companies, other entities, we need to keep these private. And I've spoken at length with Alan Robb about this, and he feels strongly that we should have a confidentiality agreement about financial issues as we work through them, so that there is no misinterpretation of where we are in the process. I think most of us could agree that personnel issues have to be confidential and ethics and grievance have to be confidential. I understand that some of you may feel like this is about hiding things, but indeed it's our intention was to include the IBT, the region presidents, in discussions that we're having so that we can share more with region presidents, not less. So that's my answer.
Eric, I'm not saying anything against that. What I'm saying is when we had the breach, that wasn't a closed session. That was just said to us that this is just amongst the board. It needs to be stated that it is a closed session. I did the presidency thing for 2 years. I had personality issues. I had grievances, and we always had a special closed session for that. We made it very noticeable. And you can do a closed session with the IBT as well as the EC board. I just don't understand why we got to go through the policy of signing a thing for confidentiality.
I think there's some possible confusion between something that's called a closed session and something that's called confidential. They're not, in my mind, the same thing.
If you have a closed session, that means what you're discussing is behind closed doors, and that's where it stays at. It's the same thing as a confidentiality thing. I think we should stay with a closed session and make it very well known that it is a closed session.
Ty, if you could just address the fact that we do send documents around to the IBT plus region VPs that are not done in open. They're not done at all. They're just emails. I think that's another question that I think that this motion seeks to address in generality. But let's get some more comments on there. So Nancy, Kathy, Jenny, John, Millie, Stephen, Gary.
I agree with Ty about the Robert's rules and the closed session. I believe there's a huge difference in being a volunteer and an officer. As a volunteer, I have no insurance that covers me, no D&O. From being
actually, you do have D&O.
I do?
Every board.
Every board member on this board has D&O insurance.
Sorry, that's
Yes.
directors and officers insurance. That's what that.
I stand corrected. Did not realize that. That's reassuring. I think there's a world of difference in a volunteer being taken to court as opposed to somebody who's a salaried employee. I just think it's a huge difference and a huge leap. And so anyway, those are my thoughts. No, I don't support it.
Thank you, Nancy. Kathy, and then Jenny, and then John.
Yeah, the first point I want to make, Ty, when we talk about transparency and then if we do your suggestion of adding all these closed sessions as we develop more and more relationships with vendors, that's going to have members, that's going to fuel the flame to them that, oh, gee, they're doing all this stuff in closed session. They don't want us to see it. So I don't think that's the solution to do that. I also will say we open ourselves to lawsuits because, well, two points. One is if we only do business with vendors that don't require confidentiality clause, we're going to eliminate the majority of people we would do business with. The number 2 point that I want to make on that is we will lose confidence in the community, and it's a small community of people that we'll be doing business with. If they find out that we're leaking this information, I just have to say, I can't believe we don't have it. We need to have it. And again, back to Eric's point, it is just a timing issue. It's not that we're doing all this secretly. It's just when it can be released. And the recent breach of confidence, we could have been sued for that. And we need to be aware of that. That could cost this club a lot of money.
Thanks, Kathy. Ginny, and then John, and then Millie.
A couple points. I would like to quickly piggyback onto what you just said, Kathy. And for anybody that doesn't really understand when you talk about the breach of the contract, and that is because, for example, Harvest Host offered us a great deal. Now, they may not turn around and offer the next club that great deal, and we could be in a big hot mess. So that's where that really comes from, is that information was between us and them. And it's not for the public to hear or learn about in a social
They're gonna call
media.
on me in a minute, so I don't want to have a mouthful.
Mute, Gary.
Okay, thanks, Ginny. We had a little audio overlap there.
Am I coming through clearly?
Yeah, I think we got you. Yeah.
Secondly, social media, bringing that up. It's one thing to compare. We've done this for 60 years. We haven't had social media for 60 years. So when something gets leaked out, it goes like wildfire and starts to get interpreted in somewhat distorted ways. I believe we should support this because it allows a layer of confidence for us to be able to review things and talk about things, knowing we signed that we recognize the importance that there are times this information needs to stay put. And for us to, every single time we have a closed discussion, have to say, okay, you know what, we're having a closed discussion. Kathy's point, that starts to look real secretive. As things are now, the freedom to move things around on the internet through emails or Zoom or things like that that we may need to do. If we have this signed document, we say, we get it. We get it that there's times that we're just not going to share it until it's ripened, it's ready, and it's for viewing. End of talk.
Thanks, Ginny. John, and then Millie.
Yeah, I just want to speak in support of the conflict of interest provision. The caravan that's in my background, where I'm a co-leader, the kiddie fees add up to over $200,000 that our members have paid in each year. And if I have a potential conflict of interest with any of the vendors, it ought to be disclosed. And I, as past caravan chair, I have had a time where a member did write to me and ask because they suspected that a caravan leader had a conflict of interest with one of the vendors. So I'm just here to speak in support of, as long as things are disclosed, it makes it a different world. But we just ought to be clear, for people in positions of responsibility for our members' funds, that if we do have a potential conflict of interest, that it's disclosed. And as Jim said, people who have worked in businesses, it's kind of a normal thing.
So John, just clarification, you addressed just the conflict of interest side. Did you also have comments on the confidentiality, or are those together the same comments? I wasn't sure.
Well, I'm in favor of having a confidentiality clause because I think when people sign it, it raises the awareness of everybody, and I think it ought to apply to people who are in positions of responsibility. It kind of reminds them that we don't want to have another incident like we have had. And as I think I said in a letter to the executive council, I think it ought to cover all of us on the board and other people who are in positions of financial responsibility. And part of that is because I think we're going to continue to have future projects. We talked about one already in the meeting about a potential campground. I think we get a lot of value when we have an executive council member working with a region president on these types of projects. And so it ought to cover all of us, just not, I think we'll never be able to keep track of, well, who signed what in the future. And so I just speak in favor of both.
Thanks, John. Okay, Millie, Gary, then Christine.
Thank you, Eric. To address Ty's, do have great respect for the folks on this in this club and in the EC and in the IBT who have far more with the club than I do. Airstreaming too, but the just because we've always done it that way theory of living has to go away. We've evolved as a club. We can't require something to always be in a closed session. Sometimes there are things that come up that will need to remain confidential, or they maybe not. And I think there should to the rule. If you think for a campfire,
Millie, you're breaking up.
Yeah, the signal here is
challenging.
Okay, I'm in favor problem signing a confidentiality agreement. I think it needs to be, we need to sign it physically as a reminder that we've taken this job. It's a very important job, even though it's a camping club, we're still running a business and we need to do it properly. That's all.
Thank you. Millie, Gary, and Christine, and then Artie.
We're an incorporated business, right?
We're 501c7, yes.
Okay, so it's not unusual for corporations. It's not, well, let me put it this way. It's not unusual for state corporations to have laws containing provisions granting all members of the organization the right to inspect the records of organizations, including the minutes of the board. So, I think you need to find out what the ruling from the state would be. Otherwise, we could be running into issues. I still believe that, a lot of the things that we're trying to do fall under a couple of umbrellas. First off, it would fall under the Roberts Rule aspect. And the other fact is that, it's integrity of the people that are working as volunteers. Obviously the situation that everybody keeps referring to, and I wasn't involved in this at all, was I guess the information was provided in an open meeting. So,
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
It wasn't in an open meeting? Well,
definitely not.
Well, as I said, I was not there, but it's up to you to do a closed meeting, and then B, if information's getting out, that it needs to be stamped as confidential, so that everybody knows what it is, because you could get a piece of documentation and you don't even know if it's confidential or not. I mean, when I worked in the corporate world for 35 years, and the only thing I ever had to sign for was, I was at Kodak, and we were working with Mashusta Industries, which owned Panasonic. Panasonic was building or planning on buying property down in the Carolinas, and we had to sign a confidentiality, an NDA, so that that information never got out. But it had a sundown time, so it had a start and a finish. Once that that agreement ended, that was it. What you're proposing is something that's open-ended.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Continuing on with the comments, we have Christine, Artie, Jan, and then Lori Plummer.
Hopefully everyone can hear me. It's very noisy where I am, unfortunately. What concerns me is this is a very open-ended, broad confidentiality agreement. I would like to be more specific. I would also like it to address what happens if someone is viewed in violation of breaching the confidentiality. I just don't feel comfortable enough as a volunteer and representing my volunteers to sign this the way it is currently written. I would just like more specific incidences. I understand the negotiation with some benefits, but we also have not even started the harvest toast yet. We're not so sure how it's even going to work. I just wonder if we're putting the cart before the horse. So if it is specific to more specific examples of negotiations, as well as then recognizing what happens if someone breaches it, I think many of us would feel better.
Thanks, Christine. Artie, Jan, and then Lori Plummer.
Thank you, Eric. Well, I want to agree with Ty Mott. I want to agree with Gary Russo. I want to agree with Christine. And what I want to do is just take a common sense approach to this. There are the city of Florence right here in the beautiful state of Kentucky. The Florence City Council goes into closed session. The Boone County Commissioners go into closed session. Common sense. If we go into closed session, we're talking about stuff that we should not talk about. Common sense approach. Another thing that bothered me was Jim Cox's comment about one of the big seven in the corporate world is you just instantly get fired if there's some kind of a breach. Well, how are we going to handle a breach? It's hard enough as it is now to get people to volunteer to become officers of the club. And I can see putting a piece of paper in front of them and saying, you'll need to sign this before you can become an officer or a region officer. So I would not vote for a non-disclosure agreement under any circumstances. I think common sense just prevails. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Artie. Jan, and then Lori Plummer.
I've been listening to the people right before me, and they've kind of answered my questions and brought up good points as well. I really think the confidential part of it, we're not going to talk about those things in an open meeting. So if we have a closed meeting, we know it's confidential. And if we are in an open meeting, by all means, we would never bring this stuff up. So I just feel like we're kind of, I don't know, going around in circles, doing what we need to do. Let's just have our meetings. If it's, as already said, if it's a closed session, we know it's stuff that doesn't need to be discussed at that particular period in time. And it will probably be discussed later. But right now, I just feel like I don't really support this. I don't know what the realms of, you know, how we will be punished or removed from office, or how that has been brought up. I just don't know where it is. There's just too many questions right now.
Thanks, Jan. Looks our last one is Lori Plummer, and then we'll kind of summarize this up.
Okay, one, I'd like to make comments personally, and then I have a couple questions, Eric, that I'd like to read off. So personally, I would just like to make the comment that I'm kind of shocked that as a board member, as a director of a full-fledged nonprofit corporation, state of Ohio, you don't feel the need for confidentiality and some of these barriers to be in place to protect this club. I'm sure most of you that have been on other boards like myself, when I'm even been compensated at other boards, even before you get on that board, you have to sign confidentiality and non-disclosure. In my jobs, I've had to sign it. Although y'all are not getting paid, you're still playing the same role as a paid board member. That's what you're here for, is to protect this corporation. It's my 2 cents. Moving on to your questions that somebody will need to answer. Chris Olson asked, who determines what's confidential and when is it no longer confidential? As well as if a vendor requires an NDA, why do they not require an NDA rather than a blanket NDA by the club? Is the intent to show vendors that we have a blanket NDA? I don't know who wants to answer these.
Let me do that one. So a classic scenario, and this has happened, where an NDA was required. And although we can sign it, typically it's exec council who gets involved in that, because the exec council is the administrative arm. While we can sign the NDA, nothing really prohibits us from going and talking about it as individuals, right? So that's the problem. The corporation, WBCCI, the 501c7, can sign the NDA, but the people who get the information, nothing bounds them to adhere to it. So for example, I can say, yeah, I'll sign it, but there's no policy internal, so I don't really have to adhere to it. I think it's a stretch, but that's kind of the thought there. Other questions that came up?
The other one was who determines what is confidential and what is not confidential?
Yeah, I think it was actually really simple. I'm not advocating for this. I just want to share with you. I've been under lots of confidential ones before. It's actually pretty straightforward. It's not that confusing. If it's been talked about and shown to the public, then it's not confidential. If it hasn't been, then the expectation is to be that it's probably for a reason and it's probably confidential. If you have a question, ask the corporate manager or me, the president at the time. There's really easy ways to go through this without fine-tuning it. Alrighty, any other questions from the members? Okay, thanks for the discussion. Now back to you, Terry. I believe you had some, so by the way, just backing up and we can finish this hopefully pretty soon. When I kicked off my president's report, there's a lot of options this board can take. I mean, you guys get to decide what you want to do. It's not me, it's not. And so one of the options is to just have this for the exec council, finance committee, and ethics and grievance, because the reality is that of the confidential stuff discussed, those meetings are not public. I don't know if you know this, but the exec council meetings are not public meetings. They're all done privately because the exec council deals with a lot of administrative stuff, which is staffing things, it's personnel things, it's legal issues, it's settlements, it's all this stuff, right? So one option the board can take is that, look, just make this for the exec council, and then we'll continue to share. I love Artie's comments. We'll continue to share with the board through closed sessions or marking things confidential, right? Another option is that this is extended to the IBT region presidents. It sounds like that is not supported. Another option is to expand it even further, and that's definitely not supported. So I think, Terry, you've got some thoughts that you've got from some members about how to do an amendment to this that might satisfy kind of the general theme here.
Yes, I have two thoughts. One is I'd like to deal with a conflict of interest part of this motion and find out if people have difficulty with that section. Would we be able to discuss that section? Because I feel like that's less controversial. And perhaps we could at some point take that off of this motion and present it separately. Are there concerns about the conflict of interest motion that people would like to share? Or do you have concerns about that one? I don't see concerns about that one. So, oh, Artie, you're muted. Maybe start over and unmute. There you go.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Just for the fun of it, Terry, give me an example of a conflict of interest that may have been experienced in the club, so we could all look at it and just have a real good understanding of a typical conflict of interest.
I'd be happy to. So let's use John's example of a caravan. So let's say there's a caravan leader who's running a caravan, and part of that is to stop at a local restaurant. So let's say that this caravan leader has an agreement with the local restaurant. If I bring my caravan to you, the restaurant says, oh, we'd love that. And we will be happy when you and your family come to share a meal with us. We'd love to comp that for you. That's a conflict of interest for him choosing that restaurant. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And I think
I can give you another one too, kind of a generalized one. So typically, Artie, the conflict of interest is that if a person is in a decision-making role in the club, and that's the important part, in a decision-making role in the club, and they are asked to make a decision on a couple of alternatives, and one of which benefits them or their family financially, then it's a conflict of interest, right? Because I get to decide, but this choice benefits me and my family financially, and this one doesn't. So that's a conflict of interest. It doesn't mean they can't participate in it. It usually means they have to disclose it, or they have to step out of that discussion. By the way, we've had a conflict of interest policy for years. I would argue that most of the board has never seen it and never been asked to sign it.
But by the same token, you could take either one of those examples and it could happen right here in Region 5. I can make an agreement, meet with people at a particular restaurant. We're setting up a buffet, a luncheon, whatever it is. And I decide to eat there while I'm there. And if the manager takes 20% off my bill, what am I supposed to do about it?
Refuse to take it.
Yeah.
It's easy. It can't benefit you financially. That's a conflict of interest.
Now that this has not happened, okay, it's not happened to me. But when you think it's different, where the restaurant owner would bribe you with free dinner, and just so to make sure we would bring our crew in. Now that hasn't happened to me either. But that, my friend, is a bribe to me, and that is a conflict of an interest. But just a restaurant owner who would give you 10% off your check or a free dessert, I don't see.
Artie, it's usually when a decision maker has a financial stake in another organization. That's usually what it is. So I think the more concrete one is if your family owned a restaurant.
Oh, very good.
A caravan.
Yes, I would.
And you decided to pick that restaurant. You can still go there, but you should not be involved in the discussion. You should step away and say, look, I've got a conflict of interest, actual or perceived. I'm going to step away from that and let someone else make that decision.
Okay, under this discussion, then I don't have a problem with conflict of interest part of this motion.
Okay, Christine had her hand up next.
Eric, you said that we currently have one. How is it the same or different than what is being proposed?
Who wants to take that?
It's different. Christine, is slightly different. But in addition to it being slightly different, and we could be happy to present both of those, we're asking our leaders to sign a conflict of interest statement that they won't do it.
But this is where I'm confused, Terry. If we have a conflict of interest statement policy already on the books, who does that apply to? And why is that not good enough for what we have? Can we see the current one? Wouldn't that be good to see the current one to see how different it is? Since we all.
How about?
By the way, it's on the leadership portal, conflict of interest policy. So, but y'all can read it. We have to at some point in this meeting. So I got your comment on that one, Christine, that you're interested in seeing the existing conflict of interest policy and understanding what the differences are in the proposed one. Ty?
We've had the part of it that doesn't allow officers to take any type of benefit from anybody outside like that. So it's a conflict. But if you think it's a conflict of interest, then you should just say no to it. I mean, that's just common sense. If you're an officer at a unit, region, or EC level, and it looks like he's taking 10% off your bill, you just say, I'm sorry, we're not allowed to do that. Okay, and I've done that before. Okay, out of good conscience, we shouldn't have to have a piece of paperwork that says, okay, we're not going to do this. So I think it's just, it's common sense when it comes to some of the stuff that if it happens, and, being on the EC board, we did have that come up, and it was discussed when I was president. It was, you couldn't take anything from somebody. And that's just the way it was. It worked out good. It stopped the officers from benefiting from people that had hitches, that people, all different types of things from all vendors and stuff. Oh, you got me into the rally, I'll take care of you and repair your hitch for you. I mean, that's the stuff that is a conflict of interest, because you can't allow that to happen.
Thanks, Ty. Kathy?
Yeah, just a real quick comment. I think we've got somebody here that understands that. We have contracts with SkyMed. If you're representing, if you sell SkyMed, all you do is excuse yourself from any votes. And Brad, you don't. That's the way the policy needs to be. And I think Terry's policy, or Terry's motion, is just clarifying this information. And I also think just Christine didn't even know we had a policy. So we've got to bring this to the forefront. And I think having people sign these things is how you do it. Somebody made that point earlier. That's it.
Okay, Terry, back to you. I want to try to wrap this up. I think I get a sense of where the board, I think you are too. So do you want to introduce an amendment or just drop it, or what's your preference?
Would like to introduce an amendment, and I will
ahead.
bring the conflict of interest perhaps back with clarification of the old policy and the new policy and how they're different, perhaps at a different meeting, if that would be helpful. But I do have an amendment, and my friend Florence will present it.
Yeah, I'm going to attempt to share my screen so you can see it. Okay, now all of a sudden I've got all the participants blocking my view.
We can see it though.
This is the confidentiality and non-disclosure and conflict of interest agreements and policies for leaders and other volunteers at the international level. Bylaws, Article 8, Board of Trustees and Executive Council, Section 1, General Powers, Policies 20.1, Conduct Policies, Section C, Number 1. If amended, this section of the policy will now read, this policy for confidentiality and non-disclosure applies to all Executive Council members, any non-voting members, or regular advisors of the EC, all Finance Committee members, all Ethics and Grievance Committee members. All members of these three groups shall sign the confidentiality agreement annually. If they decline to sign this document, then they must remove themselves from participating. They must remove themselves from participating in discussions that involve information deemed confidential by the president or committee chair. The policy may also be extended temporarily or permanently by simple majority of the EC to special and standing committees or individuals when a specified need has been identified. For example, matters involving financial data, contracts with third parties, grievances, personnel issues, external partnerships, ongoing external negotiations, etc. And can I just make a real quick personal comment? The region presidents met a week ago to talk about everything we're doing today. And I heard the concerns from all my peers. And I kind of felt, I told them I would walk with them in this, but I have to say that I feel if this amendment passes, that we as the region presidents are excluded from getting information. And I kind of thought, wow, I kind of want to be in the cool kids club. I want this information. And yeah, and it looks like right now we're not going to get it. So that's just a personal comment.
Okay, I'm gonna try to. Okay, I see some comments, and then first. I need to get a second for the motion first, and we'll go to comments on the amendment. Sorry, a second for the amendment, and then we'll go to comments on the amendment. Is there a second for the amendment? Jim Cock, thank you. All right, so questions and comments on the Tremoni amendment to the Geese motion. Laurie Grassi, then Nancy Fitzgerald.
It's just a comment that I don't know what the actual amendment language is to the motion. So I saw the document, but for purposes of Roberts, the language should be more clear in the actual motion.
More clear, Lori, than what you just saw?
Yeah, because I didn't see, I don't have that document. So for the purposes of your peers voting, they need to see how the motion will read and what was changed by the proposed motion.
So you would want to see the red line document.
Whatever will show this body what the actual motion, how it's being amended. So there was a lot of content in there, and I understand the content. And I believe most people track the content, but how is the motion changing? I'm not allowed to do this, but Mr. President, you might ask Brad Briggs to help, because I think he's probably tracking the same way I am here. I'm not allowed to do that, so you have to do it.
Let me just try first. Is there a particular section that you were looking at modifying? The block of language that you read, which is pretty clear, would it go into policy section A,
Yes.
B, whatever?
The area that is to be changed was identified in the amendment.
I thought so.
Yeah, it was all identified at the top. What would be changed?
Bring it up again.
Yeah, reshare it, please. 'Cause I thought it was, I apologize, I thought it was pretty clear.
Yeah, this is the area that is to be amendment, Miss Lori.
And it's what section specifically?
It's policies 20.1, conduct policies, section C, number 1.
Okay, got it.
I guess what I'm asking is, how does the motion read if it were approved as amended? And am I being too picky here?
I'm sorry, Lori, I don't understand. As I understand it, is that it's to replace the current section C.1 with this language right here. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yes.
Brad, aren't these sections already in the current motion? So what has changed?
So C.1 is written, I'm looking at it right now in the board book. It says the policy of confidential non-disclosure applies to all international board of trustees, region vice presidents, blah, blah, blah. And this amendment proposes to change that block, that section 1 in entirety to this.
Yeah, it removes it I guess defines who falls under the confidentiality agreement. It's only the EC, the Finance Committee, Ethics and Grievance.
Okay, I would defer to Brad on this because it just seems
okay, let's see if there are any more comments, and then we'll see what we do next. Nancy?
This seems like the third time in this meeting we're pulling apart a motion and being asked to vote or on a portion of it. That doesn't seem right. It seems like we're trying to send through a rider or something without knowing what the real bill is. And I object to the idea that EC members can be, I mean, they're elected by membership. Now we're talking about they may not be able to participate. This whole thing is just taking a very wrong turn for me. Thank you.
So just so you guys know that, sorry, thank you, Nancy, I got that. So one of the reasons why we publish the agenda 2 weeks ahead of time, and I think the board gets it another week ahead of that, is to provide for that discussion and feedback to the motion maker in advance of the meeting. So I sort of assumed that because there had not been any substantive comments to the motion maker in the last 2.5 weeks, that it was okay to bring to the board. So misunderstood that. Got that. Jim?
Yeah, I think the simple part about the amendment that Ms. Tremoni has offered is it changes over whom this applies. That's the only thing about this amendment is, instead of applying to all IBT members, region vice presidents, and blah, 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 it now is narrowing it down to a much smaller part. It doesn't change anything else about the amendment. It only changes the applicability to what group it applies. That's what the motion's saying. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
That is what the amendment is saying. It's to whom it applies. So instead of the IBT, it applies to the EC, the Ethics and Grievance, and Finance Committees. And in speaking with some of the region presidents, we understood that this was palatable. I'm a little confused. I was not expecting, I guess, maybe this, I was expecting that this might be okay, but maybe it's not.
Okay, Lori Grassi.
Yeah, and I apologize. I was just looking for change language in the motion, and I had a chance now to compare the two. And Jim is correct. It is just the intent of who it applies to. So the motion language doesn't actually need to be changed. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I have to interject here. There is other motion language that needs to be changed. Because the proposed bylaws also the proposed motion from Terry has a provision in the Article 8 that needs to be changed as well.
Okay, I'm getting one more comment, and I'm going to suggest that we table this, but that'll be up to Terry to agree or to not. I thought I saw another hand up there.
It was mine, Eric. I was just going to suggest that the amendment is it allowable that the amendment is rewritten so everybody could actually read it and we do it electronically? Is that
we can do that.
Is it able to be amended offline and then kind of pulled out of this meeting and do it offline?
So
because I think that's what everybody's asking is they want to be able to read it.
I'm okay with
okay, let me just try something here. So we've been going for almost 3 hours now. Terry, if you're willing, I would suggest that we table this. We're all going to be together as an IBT in about a month. And I do know that one of the facilitators discussions on how we work together as a board, and this discussion might fall under that, after which at a public meeting, we can vote on it or electronically on whatever we kind of come with. I feel like we've been here too long. And again, I had hoped that we got the input before the meeting, but we're not there right now.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, so this motion is tabled to date uncertain. I guess that's the right term. All right, thank you for the work on that. Oh, okay, and then by the way, so for the board, we are going to be talking about it in the strategy session, really on the norms of how we work together as a board. Y'all will be able to talk about it there. We do not make any decisions at the strategy session. That's just a strategy discussion. All of our decisions are made in public. So we won't be deciding at the strategy session, but we'll be talking about it more in general about kind of what our thoughts are and our concerns are. And then hopefully by that time, next time we look to vote on this, we can have some more specific language based on kind of where we end up over the next month or so. Cool. By the way, I will observe that the exec council in general wants this, and we'll have to, just to be clear, we'll have to rationalize that, right? How we handle this in exec council versus finance committee who wants it also, and how we manage that as a group too, because I think I want to respect their thoughts as well. To your point, they are elected, but again, if they're working their committees, they would like some expectations and an agreement to confidentiality. I think we need to sort of understand if we can provide that or not. Okay. The next one, the last one on here is not a voting thing at this point, I don't think. We obviously have a vacant treasurer position. Again, we're 3 hours into this meeting. I'm not sure we're prepared. What I took the opportunity to do was just to talk about where we were and some options that the board can consider. There are certainly other options the board can consider, but at this point, we have an interim treasurer and we need to figure out, the board does, what to do next. So I'm just going to ask for any questions and or thoughts on this. We're going to keep it down to 10 minutes max. If anyone has any thoughts on it, otherwise we're going to have to kick this down the road a bit because again, we've been here for 3 hours. Any thoughts? Terry?
You're on mute.
Sorry. I would favor, Eric, you had some ideas presented about how we could handle this, and I would favor the option number 3, which is allowing for temporary treasurer valid through August that overrides the constitutional criteria requiring that the treasurer be selected from the EC. We on the EC, nobody wants to do this. That's left without a position. And I don't think it's right to say that because we're on the EC, one of us has to do this job when we don't feel like it's something that we are either good at or have the bandwidth for. So I favor option number 3.
Any other comments? I see Jenny and then Florence.
Yes, thank you. I think we do need to create, and this is an emergency situation. So we need to have an emergency action and with an endpoint. I think that we have somebody that's very, very well qualified right now on the finance committee. And if they would perhaps agree to it, maybe we should consider that. And then run it like we had talked about, where it's from the at-large membership. We have a call. I like that idea of frankly bringing them in the middle of an EC year. So they're staggering these terms. I like that idea.
Thanks, Jenny. Florence, then Millie.
Yeah, one thing that has really come clear to me in the last 4 months of working on the finance director motion is that really everyone agrees that the person overseeing the club's finances must have a strong financial background. I think that one was always agreed upon by everyone. And I think saying that not that nobody wants to from the EC, it's not so much that, it's that nobody can. Nobody fills that one requirement that everyone agrees about before all the other, bylaw and policy stuff that we're going to have to change. So that said, I think it's irresponsible of us to float along for another 16 months without that person driving the ship. And we have someone, I think everybody knows who we're talking about. We don't know that he'll accept, but I think it behooves us as a club to kind of come back to that thing that we all agree on. Let's put that person in temporarily and go from there.
Thanks, Florence. Millie, your thoughts?
I think most of you guys know my thoughts on this. When Eric called and said, be the interim treasurer, I laughed and said, okay, sure, no problem. Do my level best for the club. It's an emergency, but it really is an emergency. And when you guys talk about delaying votes on this and June, it gives me a horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach because it's stressful. And see members who do not have a heavy financial background is frankly not fair. I'll continue to do it for as long as you guys need me to do it. And I level best, I'll make lots of jokes about drinking bourbon, but I don't drink during the EC meetings, I promise. I really think that the option of doing a temporary to the rules temporarily to make an appointment, somebody in here who knows what the heck they're doing. It's for the betterment of the club, period. We need it.
Thanks, Millie. Before I get you, Florence, I want to see if any other board members, by the way, the board members and EC or region presidents, I need your thoughts because we're trying to decide the direction we want to take this. And once there's a general direction, then we can craft some specific motions y'all can vote on at a later date, it feels like. So I need to get your thoughts on what direction you guys want to take this. So let me go to Artie first and then Florence, because Florence already spoke once.
Well, I'll just open up the closet. We're talking about Alan Rabb. It's real simple. Common sense, once again, folks. Let's approach him and ask him. And if he's willing, then we're probably already in agreement to do this on a temporary basis. So thanks.
Thanks, Artie. Lori, then Gary.
I think it's important that we take our time to do this, wait for this motion to work through, go through your to the members for the Constitution. Filling the seat right today will not change our operations. We will continue to go as we've been going and we've been doing for years. I think most of you know, but I call Alan regardless of his position. I called him prior to his visibility here. So I just think we need to be smart about how we move forward and not unnecessarily rush. I think maybe this is something we can talk more about at the strategy session.
Just to clarify, Lori, I know you're not voting, you're a non-voting member, but there are 3 options in there, or just, I guess option 0 is to just keep asking Millie to be interim. So did you, just to clarify, where were you lining up behind those comments? I couldn't understand.
I don't remember exactly which one it is right now, Eric. I think it was just stay as we were. Sorry, Millie, I will send you bourbon. I promise. To stay as we are until we're able to know where we're going forward. Let's not continue to put patches on until we have a clear path.
Okay, Gary, and then John, Ty, and then Florence, if no one else has.
We have members that want to comment, Eric.
All right, Gary.
Yeah, I'm looking at option 3. I'd like to do it right the first time, but in the same aspect, when the EC elections occurred, and there were people that when they filled out their application for to run on the EC, they put their strengths in there, and I'm a bit questioning the fact of if you put a strength on there and a need comes up, being able to step forward and fill that gap and really helps the load across the board. So, but I still am I'm leading at option 3, but I just want to put that in there is that when people are filling out for these roles in the EC and they start putting that their strengths are in this area and the need comes up and their wheelhouse that runs there, it sort of brings confusion to my mind.
Yeah, so let me just remind, as a EC candidate at the time, the process this was a new process for us, Gary, and the board, and so obviously we were trying to tweak it, and this is the Tremoni motion y'all are working on. But when people ran for the EC, we were really clear, the club was, and I'm one of those people that ran for it, that you do not have to commit to being an officer to run for the EC. You do not have to commit. You can be an EC council, a council member at large. In fact, I think that's one of the reasons why we got 30 some odd people, because we did not say you had to be something. And then once the 9 people were identified, they were given a choice to designate which positions they wanted to run for, be it president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. And nobody said they wanted to be treasurer, even back in August. We force fit it at the meeting. Now we're back in the same situation.
No, I understand that, but I mean, this is an emergency situation. You would think for a short-term situation, that skill set is very handy until we could go option 3.
Okay, thank you. All right, John, Ty, Brad, Fred.
Okay, had to unmute. I think when I looked at the options, and I know some people have said, are we okay with the current status quo? I would, a couple of points. First of all, I think that the information shared with the board about all of our financial issues and aspects and what we've had to do has significantly improved. And yet, when you read that, there's also a number of things on hold waiting for us to do something. And they're very clearly outlined there. And I think some of those things are important for us to begin to work on for the financial future of the club. And so I think that, and I'm not sure that when we talked about option 2, well, if we don't have somebody who's capable and willing, just adding in a few more EC members isn't going to help us. And I also view it as, yes, and option 3 would be an emergency override to the current constitution, bylaws, etc. I think most of our members want to be in a camping club, and they look to this group to make those kind of decisions that when faced with an unusual situation, that we will figure out an option and then go ahead and do it and then go to the permanent solution, but that we have something in the interim going forward. So I think our members would look to us to make that kind of decision. And I think I'm not so sure that option 1 or 2 is really much of an improvement compared to option 3.
Thanks, Sean. Okay, Ty, Brad, Fred.
I'm going to agree with Lori on this. I think that we should take our time and do it correctly, and make sure it's done right. It's run for years this way. We can still make it work. I know, Millie, you're going to need the your bourbon and stuff to help you through this. But I think if we just take our time and do this correctly, it'll be the best fix and not a rush temporary fix on it. And that way we can begin moving the stuff forward we need to do.
So Ty, just clarification, because do it correctly and take our time. We have a year and a half left in the treasurer position. So are you saying that Millie should stay as interim for another year and a half? Or just to get down to actionable things?
Well, I think that we need to make this go through and figure out what we need to have required for a treasurer. Okay. Millie's working out fine right now, even though everybody knows I didn't approve of that at first because she's holding 2 offices. Okay. But if we just do another temporary fix, then we're going to be back in a year and a half looking at this again. So let's take our time and get it corrected. And we can do a vote on this, electronic vote on this to make this pass when we get it done correctly. So I think we should take our time on it to do it.
We don't know if the members will pass the Tremoni amendment. And so I think that whatever we decide now, or whatever we decide, we have to assume that that stays in place for a year and a half.
It could, but we can also get a motion ahead of time to change it earlier, as it is an emergency situation. But if we're going to do it, then let's fix it correctly and do it that way. Not just put somebody in there for a year and 6 months, and then all of a sudden at the end of that, we're going to be going through the whole thing again.
Okay. Again, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just trying to get to specifics because we don't have a treasurer now. The board has not voted in a treasurer. I appointed an interim one. We're past that interim stage. The board needs to decide what they do.
Right, but we have a finance committee that's guiding us through this right now too.
All right, Brad, Fred, Marcia.
So I just wanted to clarify, Ty alluded to it, no matter what, you're going to have a special, can't think of the word. You have to work on a special.
Election.
Anyway, thank you. Because right now, even though we're staying the course, Millie is in violation of the Constitution, Article 7, Section 5, which states you can't have more than one position on the IBT. Right. So no matter what you do, you're going to have a special consideration on this. Sorry.
That's right. Yeah, we can't just stay where we are because we're out of alignment with the Constitution and bylaws. Fred, Marcia.
Yeah, and Eric, you kind of mentioned that I'm in favor of option 3, except that if the motion doesn't pass for the membership, we're going to have to go back to something else. So I'm not sure that we want to start with option 3 until we know what the members want.
Okay, Marcia, and then I think we're back to Florence.
I would disagree that we wait to do it right, because waiting could be forever, meaning the full 18 months. And to me, asking Alan Robb to step up and play the same role we just asked Millie to do, which is interim, if we're allowed to do it. I mean, that I'm not 100% clear from the conversation of whether you just have that authority, Eric, or not.
No.
But he's already doing that. He's just feeding it through Millie, because Millie, by her own admission, has to we're just taking a whole lot of Millie's work out of the equation, and nothing else is changing, in my opinion, on that option, because Alan still has to do everything he's doing. He's just going to report it directly without saying, I went through Millie to do this. So to me, it makes total sense to interim ask Alan to do it and then figure out the formal logistics around it.
Okay, Millie and then Florence, and we'll take member comments and we'll wrap on this one.
Is it possible for me to move that we just do option 3? Can I move for option 3 and we vote on it?
I don't think we can vote on it right now. We don't have the actual language, Millie. I would love to do that, but we don't have actual language on it.
Well, darn, it was worth a try.
I think the process would be that depending what the board wants to do, if the board wants to do 1, 2, or 3, then they have to do an emergency resolution or a resolution, whatever. It has to pass by whatever it is. So that's what has to happen, and the board gets to decide that. Florence?
Yeah, the tutelage that I've just had from Brad really paid off, because I was going to bring up Section 5, where we are in violation of our Constitution. So staying the course where we're at is not, it's not even an option. I also, I don't see that going with option 3, it's not a temporary fix. It's an emergency resolution. And we'll know where we are at the end of June. If we are able as a group of leaders to explain to our membership why this is a good thing. And then we'll be on our way in 2025 to go through the process that we've proposed in the policies section of this motion.
All right, thank you. Let's get our member comment, and then we're going to wrap on this one because we're running out of steam, I think. Lori, can you share with us member comments or questions, please?
Yeah, we have 2 members that have their hands up, so we can let them speak for 2 minutes. First one is Vernon.
Mr. Goodwin. And let's tee up the next person too, so we don't have to wait for them to come on.
John Holly will be afterwards.
All right, thank you. Vernon, when you're ready. If John Holly is ready, then we'll take it first.
Okay, thank you. And for what I saw this morning with Alan Rabb and the presentation that he made, especially if we have a finance committee that's as experienced as they appear to be, I think the temporary solution is already in place. The only thing that I see that is a conflict would be Millie having 2 roles, and maybe that's something that could be changed by appointing somebody else from the EC who doesn't have a place already, because the finance committee, the way I saw Alan Rabb present it today, he would be the one that we would probably want to do this. So I see it as not a long-term sort of thing. I'm not really in favor of it being called a finance director. I think we ought to just leave it treasurer. And when we find somebody, for instance, the people that have done it in the past that have not had the experience have done well. And now I think we have the finance committee that will really see it through to what we need. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Vernon. I see Vernon's hand up and I see him on screen. I don't see anything else.
We've asked him to speak.
Yeah, he's in the meeting.
Now we see him, but
He's muted. He's here,
right. Yeah, we can see that. We've asked him to unmute.
Okay. I don't see a consensus of the board on this one. I'm going to attribute it to it's complicated and it's been a long day. I think we have no choice but to continue as is for now, unless there's a specific proposal from the board to elect a new treasurer. And I haven't heard that yet. So I think I'm going to ask you all to give it some more thought. And I think we're going to hang on, Florence. And I think that we will just stay with Millie as interim until we decide concretely what we do. I think that needs to be for the next 18 months. If it changes after a constitutional vote, we can change it in August 2024. But whatever the board decides, it needs to be for the remainder of the term. Florence, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I don't see why option 3 is not a specific proposal. You're asking for a specific proposal and we have one.
Do you want to make a motion?
I would love to.
Go ahead.
Well, I would like to move that the board vote on a Constitution and bylaws emergency resolution by the IBT to waive the criteria for appointing, because that's what we're still doing, a finance director. Well, we're not calling it that yet, a treasurer. That would be my motion.
So we have a motion on the table and we'll deal with this now. So we have a second by Millie. Any other discussion on that before we go to vote on that? Okay, Jenny, is yours up? So now we're looking at questions on a specific motion. The motion is to figure out a way to do number 3 with the general terminology that Florence mentioned. All right, so Jenny and then Nancy and then Christine.
I was only going to, first of all, I'm very much in favor of not letting this go for 18 months. If we already are very clear, we're in violation of our Constitution, allowing somebody to straddle 2 roles. So I'm not in favor of letting this sit for 18 months, even under the argument of getting it right. We're already getting it wrong. So I do think we need an emergency resolution to, but I wanted Florence, if you could clarify, I think we had a double negative in there. If you can clarify the emergency resolution to allow an appointment, not allow an appointment. Because
I'm just going to try to help out. There's what I think she was referring to.
Thinking, so yes.
I think what Florence, let me try to help you out. Florence mentioned option 3, and it's in your board packet. It's pretty clear. Let me read it. Temporary, valid, the general terms, temporary, valid through August 2025. Override the Constitution criteria requiring treasurer to be selected from the exec council. 2/3 vote by IBT. Would allow the IBT to elect a non-officer individual from the current finance committee, et cetera. That's the gist of it. Now, we'd have to get the resolution written, but that's the gist of what we're trying to decide if we want to move in that direction on.
Can I reword the?
Go ahead, Florence.
What if it just says, I move that the board adopt option 3 of the president's proposed resolution process?
Let's go with that for the purposes of seeing where the board is, okay? All right, Nancy, Christine.
Does it change the vote in any way? It would be a non-voting position. We're not moving anybody else on to, in other words, everything remains the same. Alan, just if he accepts, would be treasurer in name only, but not non-voting.
Or this is only temporary right now. It's not.
But that's an important point. So Florence, can you clarify? When I wrote that, it was assuming non-voting, but because we already have a full contingent of exec council, so I think that's
absolutely
okay. So non-voting. Christine, you had your hand up also for questions before we vote. Okay, we'll go through it again. All right, so without exception, the board's direction is to adopt option 3 as amended. The amendment is that it would be to clarify that it's a non-voting position, this emergency resolution, which is valid through August 2025 or until rescinded by the board, of course. All right, so is without exception, without objection, that motion passes, or is there an objection to that motion? So by the way, if no one objects, then we're going to head down path 3. I want to make sure the board has enough time to understand. Okay. All right. Nancy and Chris.
I think this is another example of we're voting on something that's been changed and altered. And I understand it cerebrally, but
it's
really
a motion,
needs to,
Nancy, it's a motion from the floor, which we are allowed to do. So the motion from the floor requires 2/3 vote to pass. Our CBL allows a motion from the floor. The motion from the floor is to adopt option 3 as written in the president's comments, whatever, with the amendment that the clarification that it's non-voting. So that's the motion from the floor. Any other questions about the motions from the floor before we vote on it?
Eric?
Christine first and then Ty.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a question in regards. The one person that we haven't heard from is Jim Cock. Jim Cock is currently on the finance committee. He's serving as a member. He's an EC member. I'm wondering why Jim cannot fill this position as treasurer, which would not require any changes. He works closely with Alan now, and he's never been mentioned. So I just wondered what Jim's feelings are, because he is on the finance committee, and I'd like to hear from him as to, why he is not an option or why he isn't.
So Christine, I appreciate that, but we're already started with the motion from the floor. If the motion from the floor had been number 1, then we would have to be talking about that. But the motion from the floor is number 3. If it gets voted down, then we can consider option one from the floor.
I am not comfortable with voting from a motion on the floor. I would like to see it in writing. I want to make sure that we're doing it correctly, that we, like you said,
Okay,
Eric,
so-
from the very beginning. When you first introduced this, I thought your advice was very good. Let's not rush this. This has been a long day. People might be tired. And I just think that deciding this at the strategy meeting is a good way to go. I agree with Lori.
I need to ask for a parliamentarian. I'm not trying to drive this, just I need to respect the process. We have a motion from the floor. Lori Grassi, can you give us interpretation of what we need to do next?
It's my understanding that both the motion maker and the second need to agree to pull it if you decide to pull it. Otherwise you still have a motion on the floor.
Is that me?
Yes.
I believe this is an emergency situation that calls for an emergency resolution. I'm going to choose not to pull it.
Yeah.
Can I call for the vote?
Okay. Without consent, option 3 passes.
You don't mean consent, you mean?
So
mean-
without objection, option 3, the vote's been called. Without objection, option 3, the motion presented from the floor from Tremoni with the amendment of the clarification that it's non-voting passes. Is there objection to that? Okay, we have an objection, so we'll do a roll call.
Oh, wait.
Or you can help us with our 4th roll call for the day, please.
Be happy to. All right, I'm going to go by names, if that's okay. Nancy Fitzgerald,
No.
Gary Russo, Gary, are you with us?
No.
Kathy Giese,
Yes.
Ginger Slattery,
No.
Jan Hevener,
Yes.
Marcia House,
Yes.
Rick Everson,
Yes.
Fred Keel,
Yes.
Jim Cock,
Yes.
Artie Martin,
Yes.
Lawrence Tremoni.
You're muted.
Muted.
Sorry. Yes.
Time out.
No.
Sean for Abe.
Yes.
Millie O'Donnell.
Yes.
Kendall Felder.
Yes.
I'm voting yes. Stephen Parr.
No.
Christine Baum.
No.
Bard Fuller.
Yes.
John Becker.
Yes.
Jenny Schnettler.
Yes.
Okay, we have 6 no's and the rest, yes, we need 2/3 vote to pass. 2/3, if my math is correct, is 2/3 of 21 is 14. So the motion passes.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you for your guys' discussion on that. So the next step is that we will just write, well, it passes. So I'm going to discuss with Brad, our CBL chair, a little bit later on how we codify this. We'll probably talk about the election process because the next step is we have to, as a board, elect someone to the position. And I'm going to argue we don't do that now, that we allow other people to express interest and you guys to give it some more thought. So I would suspect in a couple of weeks or so, we'll be asking for an election of our treasurer, given the emergency resolution that's effective through August 2025. Okay, all right, thank you all for that. Let's go into region business. And I know it's been a long day. I'm going to ask Christine to start because she had an attachment she submitted, which was a fantastic thing she did in region 3.
Yeah, I would just like to say that thanks again to Bob Hoffman, my VP #2, who did most of the work on that, particular brochure. I showed it yesterday to Tim Maxwell because he called me and he said he would make no changes and get it printed and get it out. So that's what we'll intend to do. And of course, then we're also working on our Region 3 rally. I'd love to have any of you in Doswell. Come back and
Okay, you broke up a little bit there, Christine, but I think we got it. Yeah, so fantastic job on that. Who wants to go next? I won't do a roll call on the region presidents. It's been a long morning. Any other comments from region presidents, please? I see Jan put her hand up tentatively, I believe it was.
Yes.
Then already after that. Go ahead, Jan.
Thank you. This has been a great meeting, and I'm glad we're at this point of it, I'll be honest. But Region 6, we're busy. Our clubs being in the South, we are very active. They're already rallying. They're all around the Mardi Gras rallies. I'm in a rally with the Arkansas Razorbacks this weekend. We are just very busy. And then in the meantime, we are planning in several of our clubs eclipse rallies, and that is going to be so exciting. You know, everybody pray for good weather because that's out of our hands, but we can surely hope we have the best, but we'll still have a good time. I'm working really hard on the Region 6 rally that will be in June in Fayetteville, Arkansas. There are such opportunities for our people when they come to visit, to see things, to get to see each other, and just have a good time overall. So I'm really excited about that. Our other clubs are working hard. They're building new relationships with members. I get excited every time we get the membership page because we're always getting new members, and that just means something very positive. But overall, Region 6 doing great. The board, we're working together. We've visited a dealer this last couple of weeks, and they're excited about working with us and doing things with the club. So overall, it's a real good thing.
Thank you, Jen. All right, now I'll go across Artie and then Ginger and then Rick and then Bard.
Hey guys, hey Jan. But in Region 5, we're hoping for good weather too, but I've been telling everybody it doesn't matter if it's cloudy or snowing or anything, it will get dark. It will get dark. We may not see it, but it will get dark. Region 5 Eclipse Rally, Columbus, Indiana, is basically sold out. We are operating on a waiting list now if we get any cancellations. And recently I worked with Rick Everson from Region 8. We sent our Region 5, our regular business rally, which is going to be in Hannibal, Missouri. So we opened it up to Region 8, and I'm happy to report that almost like lightning, we wound up getting 6 trailers registered to the Region 5 rally in Hannibal for Region 8. So that's going to be fun. Going to be fun. So that's where we're at. So thanks, everybody.
Awesome, Artie. Thank you. All right, Ginger, then Rick, then Bart.
Okay, I'm going to keep this kind of short. I'm really uncomfortable at this point. I just wanted to go on record to say congratulations and to recognize our North Dakota Peace Garden unit who are celebrating their 50th year as a club. They became official on February 14th, 1974. So I don't know if we have anything from ACI that can recognize that, but I just wanted to congratulate them.
Thank you, Ginger. All right, Rick, and then Bart.
All right, thanks, Eric. We have our region rally coming up in April, starting the 24th. It's going to be at Branson at ABC Campground, and we're expecting 80 rigs for that. We also have an Eclipse rally coming up, which we're starting to wonder how we're going to accommodate everybody. But that's exciting, and we have several members of Region 8 that are involved in the rally in Sedalia, and I think everybody's excited about all of these things coming up in a very short time. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Bard, and then Stephen, and then Sean.
Yes, we're real excited up here in Region 1, where we will be going to the Brimfield, Massachusetts area in the middle of May for our business meeting rally. And I'm proud to say, but I'm also sad to say that we sold out in the first 48 hours once we opened that up, which we have to start to rethink how we can do this with a limited facilities that we seem to have up here in the Northeast to accommodate. But we do have a much larger facility that we will be accommodating a lot more people in 2025. And that is going to be really special because that's going to be in Nova Scotia with our Quebec Club, celebrating the 70th anniversary of the WBCCI. They're very close to where it was founded in Kentville, Nova Scotia. So we're working on that process right now. And hopefully we can invite everybody right after the York, Pennsylvania rally to make the trek way up to across the border into the Atlantic Maritimes. Thank you.
That's fantastic, Bard. Thank you. All right, Mr. Parr, Region 11, and then Sean, Region 12.
Excuse me. Yes, through June 1st, Region 11 is going to have 20 rallies scheduled and a couple more planned, but not firmed up yet. And then the region officer installation will be scheduled for July 1st, which our international president, Eric, has agreed to officiate. And that's it from Region 11.
Thank you, Stephen. Sean.
Okay, well, I just want to say Region 12 is actively underway with our 2024 Region Rally. Huge call out to our Region Rally Planning Committee. I know you've all heard Abe talk about it, and we have an unbelievable committee and represented by all of our clubs, which is really awesome. These folks do a great job and they work hard. We also are working on our dinner at Sedalia, so that's coming up too. So many things underway at Region 12. And that's it.
Thanks, Sean. Nancy.
I just have to do a quick plug. Intac, which is our one of our Airstream parks in Region 9, is hosting 2 fabulous events sponsored by Region 9. One of them in April 19th through the 24th is a stitching and quilting retreat. Wonderful opportunities for sewing and quilting and fishing. They hope to turn this into a national event rally. Thank you, Anna Brandon, our second VP, for making this possible. And another one, if you're a geek like Eric McHenry, there's a ham radio rally that's going to happen May 9th through 12th, somewhere in there. And it's for all you ham radio operators. And it will also be at Intac and sponsored by Region 9. And we're hoping to turn that into a fabulous national event rally in the future. So those 2 big events, brand new for us. We loved our Streaming on the Strand. It was fabulous. And our region rally in Bandera, Texas, capital cowboy of the world. Eric and Laverne will be there helping. It is now up to about 140 rigs. So that means about 300 people. So we're pretty excited for that. And things going great in Region 9. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Nancy. So Laverne and I, we have our boots and our hats packed, and we're going to be rolling later today. And by the way, Nancy told me privately she really is going to become a ham radio operator. She's going to take the test in private and be one of us. All right, Florence, Region 10.
I'll be really quick. I love hearing the problems we have with selling out our region rallies. Quickly, Region 10 sold out in 26 minutes, 140 rigs. And it's such a problem that what a great problem to have. And I'm seeing that across the board. So that's just a testament to what a great club we have.
Thanks. Anyone else? Hey, I just want to thank all of you. I mean, when I think about a board meeting, a board to work with, this is great. We all don't come into these meetings with the same perspectives and background. That's good. That's fine. We have good discussions. I think we all respect each other. That's really important. So thank you all. And we reach compromise, which is necessary. So looking forward to seeing you guys in about a month or so in Jackson Center. Until then, drive safe and have a nice time for the rest of your day. All right. Thank you.